Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. The landlord knew the building was vacant. He had personally locked the doors, sealed the windows. But every month he found a rent check slipped under his office door. No name, no signature, just cash neatly folded in an envelope. And when he checked the cameras, the door remained untouched. Martin Holloway had been managing the Oakwood Apartments for nearly 30 years. The squat brick building on the edge of Pine Ridge wasn't much to look at from the outside, weather-stained bricks and narrow windows that reflected the perpetually gray Ohio skies. Inside, the hallways whispered with the collected echoes of decades of footsteps, the walls absorbing and releasing the soft murmurs of countless lives that had passed through. When the last tenant moved out of apartment 4B in November, Martin had followed his usual routine. He'd walked through the empty rooms, his footsteps echoing against the bare walls. The afternoon light had filtered through the dusty blinds, catching particles that floated like memories in the still air. He checked the bathroom, where the faucet released a single, reluctant drop that made a hollow plink against the stained porcelain. The closets stood empty, their doors slightly ajar as if holding their breath. Satisfied, he'd locked the door behind him, the mechanism sliding into place with a definitive click. The following month, on the first Monday of December, Martin arrived at his cramped ground-floor office as usual. The morning had been particularly cold, the kind that made his arthritic fingers ache as he fumbled with his keys. As he pushed open the door, his eyes immediately fell upon a white envelope on the floor. His name was written on it in an elegant, flowing script that seemed to belong to another era. Inside was $850 in crisp bills, exactly the monthly rent for apartment 4B. Martin stood very still, the envelope hanging loosely from his fingers, the only sound in the room his own measured breathing and the soft ticking of the ancient wall clock inherited from the previous building manager. Outside, a car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating the office walls before fading away like a thought. "Must be a mistake," he murmured to himself, his voice unusually loud in the quiet room. He placed the money in his desk drawer, intending to investigate later. That afternoon, Martin climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, his footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell. The hallway stretched before him, the faded carpet absorbing the sound. As he moved toward 4B, he paused outside the door, listening. Nothing, not a sound from within. He knocked anyway, the sound sharp and authoritative. No response. He unlocked the door, the key turning smoothly in the lock. The apartment was exactly as he had left it, empty. Dust motes danced in the beam of light from the open door. The air felt undisturbed, as if no one had entered in weeks. Martin walked slowly through each room, opening closets, checking windows. Everything remained sealed, untouched. Later that day, he reviewed the security footage. The ancient system covered only the main entrance and his office door, the black and white images grainy and sometimes unreliable. But Martin watched carefully, hour after hour of footage, seeing nothing unusual. No one approached his office door. No one slipped an envelope underneath it, yet somehow it had appeared. At first, Martin assumed it was a clerical error. Perhaps a former tenant had set up an automatic payment, but no bank would deliver cash to an office door. He checked his records meticulously, the yellowed pages of his ledger illuminated by the weak desk lamp as night fell outside. No previous tenant of 4B had paid in cash. All had used checks or electronic transfers. He considered returning the money, but didn't know where to send it. There was no name, no return address, no way to trace it back to its source. After a week of indecision, he deposited the cash into the building's account, making a special note in his records. The following month it happened again, and the month after that. Always on the first Monday, always $850, always in an envelope with his name written in that same elegant script, always when the cameras showed nothing. By March, Martin had become obsessed. He installed additional cameras covering all entrances to the building. He placed a special motion-activated camera directly facing his office door. He even spent several nights sleeping on the uncomfortable sofa in his office, waiting, listening. But the envelope still appeared as if materialized from the air itself. Detective Sarah Chen from the Pine Ridge Police Department listened to Martin's story with professional detachment, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. They sat in his office, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the worn carpet. Outside, rain began to fall, a soft patter against the windows that seemed to emphasize the stillness within. "So let me get this straight, Mr. Holloway," she said, her voice calm and measured. "You're reporting that someone is paying rent for an empty apartment." Martin leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I know how it sounds, detective, but something isn't right. No one can enter this building without being seen. The doors are locked, the windows secured, yet somehow someone is getting in." Detective Chen nodded slowly, her expression neutral. "Have you entered the apartment recently?" "I check it every week," Martin replied. "It's always empty." The detective asked to see apartment 4B as they climbed the stairs together. Martin explained his weekly inspection routine, his voice echoing in the stairwell. They reached the 4th floor, the hallway stretching before them in silence. At 4B, Martin unlocked the door, pushing it open to reveal the empty space beyond. Detective Chen stepped inside, her trained eyes scanning the apartment. The rooms were indeed empty, the air still. She moved methodically through each space, checking closets, looking behind doors, examining windows. In the bathroom, she paused, noticing something Martin had missed. The mirror over the sink was completely free of dust. In an apartment that had been sealed and empty for months, everything should have had a fine layer of dust, especially in a building as old as Oakwood. But the mirror gleamed in the afternoon light as if recently wiped clean. "Mr. Holloway," she called, her voice carrying through the empty rooms. "When was the last time you cleaned this apartment?" Martin appeared in the doorway, confusion evident on his face. "I haven't cleaned it since the last tenant left in November. The cleaning service isn't scheduled until I find a new renter." Detective Chen nodded, making a note. She continued her inspection, finding nothing else unusual until she reached the bedroom closet. Pushing aside the sliding door, she knelt down, examining the back corner of the empty space. There, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was a small hole in the baseboard, perhaps 2 inches in diameter. "Was this here before?" she asked, pointing. Martin knelt beside her, adjusting his glasses. "No," he said after a moment, his voice suddenly quiet. "No, that's new." Detective Chen inserted her pen into the hole, finding that it went straight through to somewhere beyond. She made another note, then stood, brushing dust from her knees. "Mr. Holloway, I'd like to bring in a team to examine this apartment more thoroughly. In the meantime, I suggest you don't deposit any more of the mystery rent payments. Keep them as evidence." The investigation that followed revealed a truth stranger than anything Martin could have imagined. The small hole in the closet led to a narrow passage within the walls, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. This passage connected to a small space between apartment 4B and 4C, a space that didn't appear on any of the building's original blueprints. Within this hidden room, officers found evidence that someone had been living there for months, perhaps years. A thin mattress lay in one corner. A battery-powered lamp stood nearby. There were books stacked neatly against one wall, bottles of water, packets of non-perishable food, and a small desk where they found envelopes, cash, and a pen that wrote in an elegant, flowing script. The occupant, however, was gone, having disappeared during the investigation. The hidden tenant had created an elaborate system of secret passages throughout the building, allowing them to move unseen, to appear and disappear like a ghost. They had been paying rent not for apartment 4B, which they never officially occupied, but for their hidden home within the walls of Oakwood. To this day, no one knows who the hidden tenant was or why they chose to live this way. Some in Pine Ridge whisper that it was someone hiding from a troubled past. Others suggest it might have been an eccentric who preferred to live outside conventional society. The most persistent rumor claims it was the ghost of the building's original architect, who had allegedly incorporated secret spaces into many of his designs. Martin Holloway still manages the Oakwood apartments. He's had the hidden passages sealed, the holes patched, the blueprints updated. Apartment 4B now has a proper tenant who pays rent through normal channels. But sometimes late at night, when the building is quiet and the old walls creak and settle, Martin imagines he can hear soft footsteps moving within them, the whisper of someone still finding their way through the secret spaces between lives. And on particularly still nights, he finds himself listening for the soft sound of an envelope sliding under his door. Story 2, she found the old photograph at a flea market, a black and white picture of a family picnic. But as she stared, she noticed something strange, a shadow stretched across the grass, cast by a man who wasn't there. The small town of Millfield hadn't seen Detective Elaine Morgan in over 15 years. She had left behind the familiar streets and faces for the anonymity of city life, swapping childhood memories for case files and criminal profiling. Now, as she walked through the town square with measured steps, her leather shoes making a soft clicking sound against the worn cobblestones, the weight of her return settled heavily on her shoulders. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October when Rachel Winters contacted the Millfield Police Department about an old photograph she had purchased at the weekend flea market. Her voice on the phone recording was calm but tinged with an unmistakable edge of unease. The detective assigned to take her statement described her as unsettled but coherent. Rachel had bought a collection of old photographs, nostalgic scenes of Millfield from the 1970s, and among them was a peculiar family picnic photo that had caught her attention. In the quaint interview room of the police station, with its pale yellow walls and the constant, almost imperceptible hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, Rachel placed the photograph on the table. The edges were slightly worn, the image itself faded to sepia tones that spoke of decades past. 5 people sat on a checkered blanket, their faces turned toward the camera with practiced smiles. A wicker basket rested between them, half open to reveal sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. "I didn't notice it at first," Rachel explained, her finger hovering above the image without touching it. "But when I got home and was going through the photos again, I saw the shadow. And there it was, a long, distinct shadow stretching across the grass behind the family. A human silhouette clearly cast by someone standing just out of frame. But as Detective Morgan studied the photograph more closely, the inconsistency became apparent. The angle of the sun, judging by the other shadows in the image, couldn't have produced this particular silhouette. This shadow had no source. The date written on the back of the photograph in fading blue ink read, July 12, 1973. Detective Morgan recognized the location immediately: Willow Creek Park, where generations of Millfield residents had gathered for summer picnics. The detective's fingers, encased in thin cotton gloves, gently turned the photograph over. In the same handwriting were the names: Thomas, Mary, Emily, and David Cooper, with Anna Martin. Anna Martin, the name stirred something in Detective Morgan's memory, a case she had heard whispers about during her childhood in Millfield. She made a note in her small, leather-bound notebook, the pencil making a soft, scratching sound against the paper. The town archives were housed in the basement of the library, a maze of metal shelving units filled with cardboard boxes and file folders. The air was cool and dry, preserved like the documents it protected. The archivist, a woman named Helen with silver-rimmed glasses that hung from a beaded chain around her neck, led Detective Morgan to the newspaper records from 1973. The detective spent hours there, the only sounds being the gentle rustle of turning pages and the occasional sigh escaping her lips. Her fingers moved methodically through the yellowed newspapers, scanning headlines and photographs. And then in the August 17 edition, she found a small article buried on page 6, "Local man still missing after month-long search." Richard Calloway, age 34, had disappeared on July 12, 1973, the same day as the picnic photograph. According to the article, he had last been seen by his neighbor, walking toward Willow Creek Park in the early afternoon. The search had been extensive but ultimately fruitless. Richard Calloway had simply vanished. Detective Morgan returned to the photograph, studying it with renewed interest. The Cooper family and Anna Martin all smiling, unaware of the shadow falling across their perfect summer day. A quick database search revealed that Thomas and Mary Cooper had passed away years ago. Their children, Emily and David, had moved away from Millfield shortly after high school. Anna Martin, however, still lived in town. The drive to Anna Martin's house took Detective Morgan through familiar neighborhoods that had changed just enough to feel slightly off, like a memory viewed through rippled glass. Anna's home was a small, well-maintained bungalow with flowers planted in neat rows along the walkway. The detective's knock was answered by a woman in her 70s with clear blue eyes that seemed to assess and catalog everything they saw. They sat in Anna's living room, where lace doilies protected the arms of vintage furniture and the scent of chamomile tea hung in the air. The detective placed the photograph on the coffee table between them. Anna's expression didn't change as she looked at it, but her hands resting in her lap tightened almost imperceptibly. "I remember that day," Anna said after a long silence. "It was hot, the kind of summer heat that makes everything move slower." Her voice was steady, measured in a way that suggested careful control. "Tell me about Richard Calloway," Detective Morgan said softly. The teacup in Anna's hand trembled slightly, a tiny ripple forming on the amber surface of the liquid within. "Richard was Thomas Cooper's business partner," she finally answered. "They had the hardware store together." "Were you close to him?" A pause filled only by the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. "We were friends." Detective Morgan let the silence stretch between them, a technique she had learned in her years of interviewing. People often filled uncomfortable silences with truths they hadn't intended to share. "Mary knew," Anna finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "about Richard and me. She found out the week before that picnic." Her gaze drifted to the window where the afternoon light was beginning to fade. "Thomas didn't know. He invited Richard to join us that day, but Richard never showed up." The detective wrote in her notebook, the pencil moving almost silently across the page. "Did you know he went missing that same day?" Anna's eyes returned to the photograph. Everyone knew it was a small town. There were search parties for weeks. A pause then. They thought he might have left town because of financial problems at the store. Back at the police station, Detective Morgan requested the original case file on Richard Calloway's disappearance. It was thin missing persons cases from the 1970s often were, but it contained interviews with Thomas Cooper, who had reported financial discrepancies at their hardware store shortly after Richard's disappearance. The implication was clear. Richard had embezzled money and fled. The detective spread the contents of the file across her desk. Something wasn't adding up. She called the department's photographic analyst, who confirmed what she had suspected about the shadow in the picture. It was impossible given the lighting conditions. It's almost as if someone added it later, the analyst suggested, or it's some kind of camera malfunction. 3 days into her investigation, Detective Morgan received the results from the ground-penetrating radar survey of Willow Creek Park. The technician pointed to an anomaly on the screen, a disturbance in the soil layers approximately 6 feet deep, located in an area behind where the Cooper family had been sitting in the photograph, the exact location where the shadow fell. The excavation began at dawn the following day. By mid-morning, they had uncovered human remains. Preliminary examinations suggested they had been there for decades. A man's wristwatch was found among the remains, a distinctive silver timepiece with a worn leather band. Detective Morgan returned to Anna Martin's home that evening. The older woman opened the door before she could knock, as if she had been waiting. Without a word, Anna led her to a small desk in the corner of the living room and removed a faded photograph from a drawer. It showed a much younger Anna standing next to a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wore a silver watch with a leather band. "I took the photograph that day," Anna confessed, her voice steady despite the tears that had begun to slide down her cheeks. "I set up the camera on a tripod. Thomas had been drinking. He was angry about the store, accused Richard of stealing. They argued while Mary and the children were setting up the picnic." She took a deep breath. "It happened so fast. Thomas pushed him. Richard fell and hit his head on the large rock by the oak tree. He didn't get up." The detective's pen hovered above her notebook, and then Thomas panicked. "He made me take the picture of them as if nothing had happened. He said we needed an alibi to show we were just having a normal day. After dark, he came back," and her voice trailed off. "I couldn't stop seeing him there, though. Every time I looked at that photograph, I could see Richard's shadow on the grass where he had fallen. It wasn't really there, of course, but in my mind, it was always there." 2 weeks later, forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Richard Calloway. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Thomas Cooper had been dead for 12 years, but Anna Martin was charged as an accessory after the fact. As Detective Morgan closed the case file, she couldn't help but wonder about the shadow in the photograph. The analysis had shown no tampering, no double exposure. Just an inexplicable darkness stretching across the grass, a man who wasn't there, but whose presence had never truly left. Sometimes, she thought, as she placed the photograph into the evidence box, the past casts shadows long after the light that created them has gone out. And in those shadows, the truth waits patiently to be found. Story 3. The Pineview Inn stood at the end of Blackberry Road, a 3-story Victorian structure with peeling white paint and windows that reflected nothing but emptiness. For 7 years, it had been abandoned, a casualty of the highway bypass that diverted travelers to the more modern accommodations along Interstate 40. Martin Cleary had inherited the property from his uncle, and while he occasionally drove by to ensure vandals hadn't broken in, he hadn't stepped inside for nearly 3 years. That changed on a Tuesday morning in late October, when the maple trees lining the property had turned a deep crimson. The air carried a subtle chill as Martin turned his key in the rusted lock of the front door, expecting the familiar scent of dust and abandonment. Instead, the scent of lemon polish greeted him. Martin paused in the doorway, his breath visible in the cool morning air. The hardwood floor of the lobby gleamed under a thin layer of sunlight that filtered through surprisingly clean windows. The reception desk, once covered with dead insects and fallen plaster, now stood polished and organized, the old brass bell centered perfectly on its surface. "Hello," Martin called, his voice echoing through the silence. No answer came, but something felt different in the stillness, as if the emptiness was listening back. Detective Eliza Harmon's pen moved methodically across her notepad as Martin described what he had found. The small interview room at the Oak Ridge Police Department smelled of coffee and furniture polish. A clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second punctuated by the soft scratch of her pen. "So you're saying everything was claimed?" Detective Harmon's voice remained level, professional, with just the slightest hint of skepticism. "Not just claimed," Martin leaned forward, his fingers interlaced tightly. It was as if the hotel was ready for business. Beds made with fresh linens, towels folded into perfect triangles in every bathroom. Even the old coffee maker in the breakfast area had been wiped down and plugged in. Detective Harmon nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving her notepad. "And you're certain no one had permission to be there?" "The place has been closed since 2017. The electricity was shut off years ago." Martin paused, his gaze drifting to the window where autumn leaves danced across the parking lot. But the strangest thing was the guest book. The detective raised her eyes. "Tell me about the guest book." Martin's voice lowered as if sharing a secret. It was open on the reception desk, a leather-bound book we used to keep for guests to sign. It was filled with signatures, pages and pages of them, all dated within the past 6 months. Harmon set down her pen. "Do you still have this book?" "In my car. I brought it straight here." The guest book sat on Detective Harmon's desk, its pages carefully turned by gloved hands. Each signature was distinct, some flowing and elegant, others quick and barely legible. All were accompanied by dates, room numbers, and brief comments about their stay. "Room 212 has a lovely view of the sunrise. Thank you for the warm hospitality. Catherine Mendel, April 3rd. The silence here is perfect for writing. I've finally finished my manuscript after 3 restful nights. Thomas Ward, May 18th. Second visit this year. The peace of this place calls to me. Alina Simmons, August 30th. Forensic technician Raj Patel carefully photographed each page before testing for fingerprints. Nothing, he said after an hour. Not a single usable print except for Mr. Cleary's on the cover. Detective Harmon stood by the window of her office, watching the afternoon light change as clouds passed overhead. Run the names through the database, all of them. 3 days passed before the results came back. None of the 67 names in the guest book matched any living person in their records. Detective Harmon drove to the Pineview Inn alone, the guest book secured in an evidence bag on the passenger seat beside her. The hotel stood in the gathering dusk, its windows dark against the fading light. Harmon felt a slight reluctance as she approached the front door, key in hand. Martin Cleary had given her permission to investigate, but had firmly declined to accompany her. The door opened with a soft creak. Detective Harmon switched on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness of the lobby. The floor still gleamed. The reception desk remained perfectly organized. She moved the light across the room, noting the absence of dust on the antique furniture, the carefully arranged tourist brochures all outdated by several years. Room by room, she ascended the stairs, her footsteps creating a rhythm against the silence. Each bedroom was immaculate, beds perfectly made, bathroom fixtures polished, not a speck of dust on any surface. Yet the air felt undisturbed, as if no one had breathed in these spaces for years. In room 212, Catherine Mendel's room, Harmon stood by the window. The view faced east, where the sun would indeed rise. On the nightstand sat a single book, collected poems of Emily Dickinson, its pages well-worn but clean. The forensics team arrived the next morning. They found nothing, no fingerprints, no DNA, no evidence of anyone having been in the building besides Martin Cleary and Detective Harmon. The electricity remained disconnected. The water pipes, when tested, released only a rusty trickle before running dry. "I don't understand," said Officer Jenkins, the youngest member of the team. "Who would break into an abandoned hotel just to clean it?" Detective Harmon didn't answer. She was looking through county records on her tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. Archivist Helen Mayers moved with careful precision among the shelves of the County Historical Society, her fingers tracing along boxes labeled by year. "The fire at the Pineview, that would be 1932, she said, her voice barely above a whisper in the hushed space. Before it was called the Pineview Inn, it was the Blackberry Road Hotel. She placed a box on the table and opened it with reverent hands. Inside were newspaper clippings, yellowed with age, and a few photographs preserved in plastic sleeves. It was one of the worst tragedies in county history, Helen continued, extracting a front-page article. A fire broke out in the middle of the night. The hotel was full of wedding party and several traveling salesmen. Detective Harmon leaned closer to read the headline. Tragedy AT Blackberry Road, 67 souls lost in Hotel Inferno. 67, the exact number of signatures in the guest book. With trembling fingers, Helen pulled out a photograph showing the charred remains of the hotel. They rebuilt it, of course, reopened in 1934 as the Pineview Inn, but it never quite thrived after that. People said they could hear crying in the walls. "Do you have a list?" Harmon asked quietly, "of the victims?" Helen nodded slowly. "We do." The list was exactly as Detective Harmon had feared. Every name matched a signature in the guest book: Catherine Mendel, Thomas Ward, Eleanor Simmons, and 64 others. The room numbers corresponded as well. That evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Detective Harmon returned to the Pineview Inn alone. She placed the guest book back on the reception desk, open to the last signed page. Then she added a new entry in her careful handwriting. "I hear you. I see what you've done with your home. May you find peace. Detective Eliza Harmon, October 28th. She left the pen beside the book and walked out, locking the door behind her. The Pineview Inn was demolished 3 months later, a decision made by Martin Cleary after multiple potential buyers inexplicably backed out at the last minute. Detective Harmon stood across the street as the wrecking ball took its first swing, sending decades of history crashing down in a cloud of dust. "Do you think they'll move on now?" asked Officer Jenkins, who had joined her. Harmon watched as the second floor collapsed, taking room 212 with it. "I don't know," she said softly. "Some guests never check out." The case file remains open but inactive in the Oak Ridge Police Department records. Occasionally, late at night, when the building is empty except for the officer on desk duty, the smell of lemon polish drifts through the hallways. And sometimes, the pages of Detective Harmon's reports turn on their own, as if read by invisible eyes. No one mentions these occurrences in official records. Some stories, after all, are best left untold, like the mystery of the hotel that never had guests, yet was never truly empty. Story 4. The dust motes danced lazily in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the small attic window. It was the kind of golden light that turns ordinary objects into treasures, casting long shadows across the wooden floorboards worn smooth by decades of footsteps. The air was heavy with the scent of old paper and the particular mustiness that belongs exclusively to spaces long undisturbed. This was the third floor of the Mercer family's new home on Oakwood Drive, a Victorian-era house with good bones, as the realtor had described it, but in need of considerable attention. Ellen Mercer stood in the center of the attic, a bandana tied around her chestnut hair, clipboard in hand, as she methodically cataloged items left behind by the previous owners. Her husband Michael was downstairs with their 10-year-old daughter Sophie, removing faded wallpaper from what would eventually become a home office. The house had been on the market for nearly 3 years before the Mercers purchased it at a price that seemed almost too reasonable for the historic neighborhood. The silence of the attic was comfortable, broken only by the occasional notation of Ellen's pencil on paper and the distant sound of a lawn mower from somewhere down the street. She moved toward a stack of cardboard boxes in the corner, each coated with a thin film of dust. As she leaned down to examine the contents of the first box, a sound cut through the stillness, the distinct mechanical ring of a telephone. Not the digital chirp of a modern cell phone, but the insistent mechanical bell of a rotary phone, the kind that had largely disappeared from American homes decades ago. Ellen straightened slowly, her brow furrowing as she turned toward the sound. It seemed to be coming from behind a weathered steamer trunk pushed against the far wall. "Michael," she called out, but the ringing continued uninterrupted. It wasn't possible that her husband was playing some kind of joke. She could still hear the scraping of his tools against the wall downstairs. With careful steps, Ellen moved toward the trunk, sliding it aside to reveal a small alcove in the eaves that had been concealed. There, sitting on a small wooden stool, was an antique black rotary telephone. Its coiled cord was severed cleanly about 6 inches from where it connected to the base, frayed copper wires visible at the cut end. And yet, impossibly, the phone continued to ring. Ellen stood frozen, watching as the bell mechanism inside visibly trembled with each ring. Cautiously, she reached out, her fingertips hovering just above the handset, which was vibrating slightly with each ring. The logical part of her mind insisted this wasn't possible, a disconnected phone couldn't ring. But another part, a more primal part, felt a cold certainty that whatever was on the other end of this impossible call wasn't something she wanted to speak with. Detective Ray Hoskins leaned back in his desk chair, the worn leather creaking under his weight as he studied the photographs spread across his desk. 23 years on the force, with the last 12 in homicide, had left him with deep lines etched around his eyes and a permanent furrow between his brows. The Mercer case had landed on his desk 3 weeks ago, and every morning since he found himself returning to these photographs, searching for something he might have missed. The black rotary phone appeared in several of the images, looking innocuous now that it had been tagged and bagged as evidence. The severed cord was clearly visible in the close-up shots. The lab had confirmed what seemed impossible: the phone wasn't connected to any power source, and the wiring inside the Mercer home's attic hadn't been functional for at least 30 years. Still obsessing over the haunted telephone, Detective Abby Chen set a steaming cup of coffee on his desk and settled into the chair opposite him. At 36, Chen was relatively new to homicide, but she possessed a sharp analytical mind that Hoskins had come to rely on. Not haunted, Hoskins corrected automatically, just unexplained. Along with Ellen Mercer's disappearance, Chen added, her voice softening. Any updates from the canvas? Hoskins shook his head. Nothing new. Michael Mercer swears his wife called down to him that she was going to check something outside after finding some old photographs in the attic. He was busy with the wallpaper removal and didn't think anything of it until dinner time when she still hadn't returned. And the phone. Michael claims he never heard it ring, says Ellen never mentioned it to him either. But their daughter Sophie told a different story during her interview. Chen nodded, reaching for the transcript. She said she heard her mother talking to someone upstairs and then heard the phone ring several times over the next few days before her mother vanished. The investigation had expanded beyond the Mercer family after county records revealed a disturbing pattern. The house on Oakwood Drive had seen 6 owners in the past 40 years, an unusual turnover rate for the otherwise stable neighborhood. More concerning was that in 3 of those cases, a resident had disappeared without explanation, all women, all last seen in or near the home. Hoskins picked up another folder, this one considerably older than the others. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1978, featuring a photograph of the house looking much the same as it did now. The headline read, "Local operator missing, family seeks answers." The article detailed the disappearance of Margaret Wilkes, a telephone switchboard operator who had vanished from the home after telling her husband she needed to answer an important call. "I spoke with Margaret Wilkes' son yesterday," Hoskins said, sliding the clipping toward Chen. "He's in his 60s now, living in Arizona, says his mother was devoted to her job at the telephone company. Apparently she brought some equipment home to practice during off hours. He remembered a phone in the attic that his father removed after her disappearance." "You think it's the same phone?" Chen asked, studying the article. "Can't be sure, but the timing fits." The son mentioned something else interesting. His mother had been increasingly concerned about a particular caller in the weeks before she vanished, someone who never spoke but stayed on the line, breathing. She'd reported it to her supervisors, but in those days, tracking calls wasn't as simple as it is now. The investigation continued for months, with the black rotary phone sitting in the evidence locker, occasionally examined but yielding no fingerprints other than Ellen Mercer's and no explanations. The case grew colder as winter settled over the town. Michael and Sophie Mercer eventually moved away, unable to remain in the house with its unanswered questions. It was on a quiet Tuesday morning, nearly 8 months after Ellen's disappearance, that Officer Jenkins called up to homicide with an odd report. The evidence locker supervisor had noted a strange sound coming from the shelf where the Mercer evidence was stored, specifically from the box containing the black rotary phone. It was ringing. Hoskins and Chen stood silently in the evidence room, watching as the telephone vibrated slightly on the metal shelf, its mechanical bell trembling as it produced that distinctive vintage ring. The severed cord lay limply beside it. "This isn't possible," Chen whispered, though the evidence before them suggested otherwise. Hoskins felt a chill travel up his spine as he stared at the phone. Decades of police work had taught him to trust evidence above all else, but this defied rational explanation. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the handset. "What are you doing?" Chen asked, alarm evident in her voice. "Someone's trying to reach us," Hoskins replied, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "Maybe it's time we answered." His fingers closed around the receiver, cool and smooth against his palm. The ringing stopped the moment he lifted it to his ear. For a long moment there was nothing but silence on the line. Then faintly he heard what sounded like several voices speaking simultaneously, as if from a great distance. Women's voices, overlapping in whispers too faint to make out individual words. Among them, he thought he recognized the voice of Ellen Mercer from the videos her husband had shared. Before Hoskins could speak, a single voice emerged clearly from the others. It was precise, professional, with the measured cadence of someone accustomed to connecting calls. "We've been waiting for you to answer," the voice said. "There are others here who need to come home." The case of the Oakwood Drive disappearances remains officially unsolved. The black rotary phone sits in a special section of the evidence locker, its cord still severed, its mysteries intact. Detective Hoskins retired 6 months after answering that impossible call, citing personal reasons. Before leaving, he submitted a final report that most of his colleagues attributed to stress or an early onset health condition. What's certain is that the house on Oakwood Drive stands empty once again, its windows dark, its attic still harboring shadows that seem deeper than they should be. And sometimes, late at night, neighbors report hearing the distant sound of a telephone ringing, though no one is ever quite sure which house it's coming from. Story 5. The Harrington estate stood on the outskirts of Silver Creek, a small town where most residents knew each other by name. The sprawling Victorian mansion had been in the family for generations, its weathered stone facade a testament to time's passage. In the gentle glow of dusk, the house seemed to breathe with the evening breeze, curtains billowing slightly through partially open windows. Every night they locked the guest room door, but every morning it stood wide open. No signs of forced entry, nothing missing, just a note left on the bed: "Please don't lock me out." Detective Sarah Morgan's shoes made a soft, rhythmic sound against the polished hardwood floors as she followed Mrs. Harrington through the dimly lit hallway. The air carried the faint scent of lemon furniture polish and something older, more elusive, the particular fragrance of history embedded in walls that had witnessed decades of human drama. "It started 3 weeks ago," Mrs. Harrington explained, her voice barely above a whisper. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and hands that betrayed a slight tremor when she gestured toward the guest room at the end of the hall. "At first, we thought maybe the lock was faulty." Sarah nodded, letting the silence stretch between them. In the distance, the grandfather clock in the foyer chimed 4 times, the sound reverberating through the house like ripples on still water. The guest room itself was unremarkable: a queen-sized bed with a cream-colored duvet, a mahogany dresser with a small collection of antique perfume bottles, and heavy burgundy drapes that filtered the afternoon light into a soft, amber glow. Nothing suggested intrusion or disturbance, yet the atmosphere felt charged, as if the very molecules of air were holding their breath. "May I see one of the notes?" Sarah asked, pulling on thin latex gloves that crinkled softly in the room's stillness. Mrs. Harrington opened the top drawer of the nightstand and removed a small stack of identical notes. Each one bore the same message in neat, flowing handwriting: "Please don't lock me out." The paper was common, available at any stationery store, and the ink appeared to be from a standard black fountain pen. "We've changed the locks twice," Mr. Harrington said from the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the hallway light. His voice carried the weariness of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. We've even tried staying awake, taking shifts to watch the door, but somehow we always fall asleep, and by morning the door is open and there's a new note. Sarah carefully placed the notes in an evidence bag, the plastic making a soft crinkling sound as she sealed it. Have you noticed anything else unusual? Cold spots, missing items, strange noises. The couple exchanged a glance laden with unspoken communication. Tell her about the music, Eliner, Mr. Harrington finally said. Mrs. Harrington's fingers twisted anxiously in the fabric of her cardigan. Sometimes, very faintly, we hear piano music. Our piano hasn't been played in years, not since our daughter. Her voice trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished, hanging in the air like mist. Detective Morgan made a note in her small leather-bound notebook. The scratch of her pen against paper seemed unnaturally loud in the room's heavy silence. Your daughter. Lily, Mr. Harrington said, his voice catching slightly on the name. She died 5 years ago, car accident on Willow Road. She was 23. The pieces began to arrange themselves in Sarah's mind, not with the sudden clarity of revelation, but with the slow, inevitable drift of autumn leaves settling on still water. Did Lily stay in this room? Mrs. Harrington shook her head. No, her room was across the hall. We haven't changed it. She hesitated, then added, but this was her favorite room in the house. She said it caught the morning light perfectly. She would often sit by that window to read. Sarah walked to the window, feeling the subtle temperature drop as she approached the glass. Outside, the garden stretched toward a small grove of trees, their branches swaying gently in a breeze too soft to be heard. Has anything been moved in Lily's room? She asked. The Harringtons looked at each other again, that same wordless exchange that spoke volumes. We keep the door locked, Mr. Harrington admitted. We haven't been able to, it's too painful. Over the next few days, Detective Morgan immersed herself in the Harrington case. She interviewed neighbors who spoke of Lily with fond remembrance, a talented pianist, a kind soul, a young woman whose life had stretched before her with limitless promise until that rainy night on Willow Road. She reviewed the accident report, a single-car crash, no alcohol or drugs involved, just a deer that had suddenly appeared in the headlights, causing Lily to swerve on the wet asphalt. At the county records office, Sarah pored over the history of the Harrington estate, her fingers collecting a fine layer of dust as she turned pages that hadn't been consulted in years. The house had been built in 1887 by Theodore Harrington, who had made his fortune in lumber. There were no recorded deaths in the house, no tragedies that might explain the current phenomenon. On the 5th evening of her investigation, Sarah returned to the Harrington house after sunset. The windows glowed warmly against the gathering darkness, each one a rectangular promise of life and warmth amid the encroaching night. Mrs. Harrington met her at the door, her face drawn with exhaustion. It happened again, she said without preamble, but this time. She led Sarah to the guest room, where Mr. Harrington stood rigidly beside the bed. On the cream-colored duvet lay not just a note, but a small silver hairpin, a dragonfly with delicate filigree wings. It was Lily's, Mrs. Harrington whispered, her voice trembling. She wore it the day of the accident. It was returned to us with her other personal effects. Where was it kept? Sarah asked, carefully photographing the hairpin without touching it. In her jewelry box, Mr. Harrington replied. In her room, the locked room. That night, with the Harringtons' permission, Sarah stayed in the house. She settled into an armchair in the hallway between the guest room and Lily's room, a thermos of coffee beside her and her notebook open on her lap. The house creaked and settled around her, its old bones adjusting to the cooling night air. At precisely 2:17 a.m., Sarah's head nodded forward, sleep claiming her despite her determination to remain awake. Her dreams were filled with piano music, distant and melancholy, a melody that seemed to be searching for its conclusion. She awoke with a start at 3:42 a.m., the hallway colder than it had been. The guest room door remained closed, but a thin line of light shone beneath Lily's door, a door that had been perfectly dark when Sarah had taken her position hours earlier. With careful, silent movements, Sarah approached Lily's door. She placed her hand on the smooth wood, feeling a vibration that might have been her own pulse or might have been something else entirely. The key was in the lock, turned to secure the room from intruders or perhaps to contain something within. As she touched the key, it turned beneath her fingers, not with her effort, but as if guided by another hand laid atop her own, a hand she could feel but not see, cool and light as a breath of winter air. The door swung inward. Lily's room was exactly as it must have been 5 years ago, posters of bands on the walls, books stacked on the desk, a laptop covered in stickers. Moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating a path across the hardwood floor to the closet, where the door stood slightly ajar. Sarah moved forward as if in a dream, each step deliberate in the silver blue light. From the closet came the faint scent of lavender. Lily's perfume. Sarah somehow knew, though no one had mentioned it. Inside the closet, behind a row of dresses still waiting for their owner's return, was a small door, the kind that might lead to an attic space or a storage area. It was secured with a simple hook and eye latch, the hook raised out of its cradle. Sarah opened the door to reveal a narrow passageway, dusty and disused, leading to what could only be the guest room. The tunnel was a quirk of old house architecture, a servant's passage perhaps, or a way for family members to move between rooms without entering the main hallway. As the pieces fell into place in Sarah's mind, she heard the soft click of the guest room door being unlocked from inside. The next morning, Sarah sat with the Harringtons in their kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows and catching the dust motes in golden suspension. The coffee in their cups had grown cold, forgotten in the wake of revelation. She was never trying to scare you, Sarah explained gently. She was trying to come home. The passage connected Lily's room to the guest room, a passage the Harringtons had forgotten or never known about. When they locked Lily's room in their grief, they had unknowingly trapped part of her presence, her essence, whatever might remain after death. When they locked the guest room each night, they were cutting off the only path she had to move freely through the house she had loved. That afternoon, the Harringtons unlocked Lily's door for the first time in 5 years. They opened windows that had been shut too long, letting fresh air circulate through rooms that had held sadness like a physical presence. They placed the silver dragonfly hairpin on Lily's dresser, where it caught the light and seemed to shimmer with more than just the sun's reflection. That night, for the first time in weeks, they left both doors unlocked. In the morning, the guest room door remained as they had left it, open and welcoming. On the bed lay a single note, the last they would ever receive. "Thank you for letting me stay." The case of the room they couldn't lock was never officially closed in Detective Morgan's files. There was no crime to solve, no perpetrator to apprehend, just a family learning that sometimes the doors we lock to keep pain out also lock in the healing we need most. In Silver Creek, the Harrington house still stands, its windows now regularly open to the changing seasons. And sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, Neighbors report hearing the distant, beautiful notes of piano music drifting through the night air, not sad, not haunting, but peaceful. The sound of someone who has found their way home. Story 6. She had always been friendly with her elderly neighbor, waving from across the street. But one evening he knocked on her door, eyes wide with fear. "I saw you leave your house this morning, but you've been in your living room all day." Morgan Reeves stood in her doorway, the evening air carrying the scent of autumn leaves and wood smoke. She felt her smile freeze on her face as she studied Mr. Harrison's trembling hands. The 76-year-old widower had lived across the street for decades, his routines as predictable as the seasons. Each morning at 7, he would collect his newspaper. At noon, he would water his immaculate garden. In the evening, he would sit on his porch, watching the neighborhood settle into stillness. "Mr. Harrison, I've been at work all day," Morgan said softly, her voice barely disturbing the quiet of the suburban twilight. "I just got home 20 minutes ago." The old man's eyes, clouded with cataracts but still sharp with intelligence, narrowed in confusion. "No," he insisted, his voice lowering to a whisper. "I saw you come home at 9 this morning. You were wearing that blue sweater you have, the one with the buttons. You've been in your living room. I've seen you moving around all day." A cool breeze whispered through the maple trees lining Oakwood Drive, rustling leaves that would soon fall. Morgan felt goosebumps rise on her arms, and not from the evening chill. She glanced back into her empty house, the hall light casting long shadows across her hardwood floors. "Would you like to come in, Mr. Harrison? I can make some tea." In her kitchen, with its warm yellow walls and copper-bottomed pots hanging above the island, Morgan watched as Mr. Harrison's weathered hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. Steam rose between them like questions without answers. "Tell me exactly what you saw," she prompted, keeping her voice level and calm despite the unease settling in her stomach. Detective Elaine Carter sat at her desk in the Lakeview Police Department, the soft glow of her desk lamp illuminating the scattered papers of open cases. The precinct hummed with the quiet energy of the night shift keyboards clicking, occasional murmurs, the distant sound of a door closing. It was in these quiet hours that she did her best thinking, away from the daytime chaos of ringing phones and constant interruptions. Her attention drifted to a new file that had been placed on her desk just before shift change. A potential stalking case from Oakwood Drive. Nothing remarkable at first glance, a woman concerned about someone possibly entering her home while she was away. But something about the witness statement from an elderly neighbor had caught Carter's attention. "He was so certain," she murmured to herself, flipping through Morgan Reeves' initial statement. "So absolutely convinced he saw her inside when she wasn't home." Carter reached for her coffee, long since gone cold, and took a thoughtful sip. The department had been short-staffed for months, and technically nothing had been stolen, no evidence of forced entry, just an old man's potentially confused observations and a woman's growing unease. But 30 years of police work had taught Carter to listen to the quiet voice of intuition whispering at the back of her mind. The detective returned to the file, running her finger along the lines of the report. Morgan Reeves, 34, lived alone. Graphic designer working remotely 3 days a week. No known enemies, no recent breakups or conflicts. But Mr. Harrison's statement was detailed specific observations about her movements throughout the day, descriptions of her clothing, even which rooms she had moved through. "Too specific for confusion," Carter said to the empty room, reaching for her phone. 3 days later, Morgan sat on her couch, the curtains drawn tight against the gathering darkness. A half-empty cup of tea sat forgotten on the coffee table. Her phone lay beside it, Detective Carter's number now saved in her contacts. Nothing to report yet, the detective had told her that morning, but we've increased patrols in your neighborhood, and the technician will be by tomorrow to install the security cameras. Morgan had nodded, thanked her, and gone about her day, trying to ignore the constant sensation of being watched. She had started changing clothes in her bathroom, away from windows, had begun checking closets when she came home, had installed 3 new locks on her back door. Mr. Harrison called her twice a day now, his concern growing with each passing hour. "I saw someone in your backyard this morning," he had said earlier, "just a shadow moving behind your shed." The police had found nothing, but Morgan had felt it too, a presence, like the ghost of a forgotten melody, almost imperceptible but undeniably there. The soft chime of her doorbell broke the silence, startling her from her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw Detective Carter standing on her porch, her expression unreadable in the dim porch light. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Carter said when Morgan opened the door, her voice carrying the weight of long hours and difficult conversations. "But we found something I thought you should know about right away." At the detective's request, Morgan followed her across the street to Mr. Harrison's house. The old man was sitting in his living room, a worn photo album open on his lap, his hands speckled with age spots and traced with blue veins trembled slightly as he turned the pages. "Mr. Harrison showed me some photographs today," Detective Carter explained quietly, "from when he was tracking what he thought was you in your house." Morgan felt a chill run down her spine as she looked at the images. They were taken with an old Polaroid camera, slightly blurry but unmistakable, a woman with her build and hair color moving through her house, watering plants, opening curtains, sitting at her dining table. But it wasn't her. "I knew something wasn't right," Mr. Harrison said, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. "The way she moved, too precise, too practiced, like someone trying to be you but not quite getting it right." Detective Carter laid a gentle hand on Morgan's shoulder. "We've matched the woman in these photos to a similar case from 2 years ago in Riverdale. Catherine Wells returned home from vacation to find her house had been lived in while she was away. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged, just occupied." The detective's voice lowered. "The fingerprints we lifted from your back door handle yesterday matched those from the Wells case. We're dealing with someone who temporarily moves into empty homes, takes on the identity of the rightful occupant." "But why?" Morgan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's what we need to find out," Carter replied, the soft lamplight reflecting in her tired eyes. "But for now, I don't think you should stay at your house. And Mr. Harrison," she turned to the elderly man, "you did exactly the right thing." Later that night, as Morgan sat in a hotel room provided by the police department, her phone vibrated with a text message. Detective Carter had sent her a case file number and a brief message. "We found 6 more cases across 3 states, always women living alone, always someone watching their routines for weeks beforehand." Morgan set the phone down, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the hotel, distant elevator chimes, the hum of the air conditioning, the occasional footsteps passing her door. She thought of her house sitting empty across from Mr. Harrison's watchful window. She thought of the woman who had worn her life like a borrowed coat. And she wondered, as she finally drifted toward uneasy sleep, how many other homes had temporary residents that no one had noticed. How many lives were being silently, meticulously shadowed. How many neighbors weren't watching quite closely enough to notice the subtle wrongness of a stranger living someone else's life? In the darkness of her hotel room, Morgan reached for her phone and called Mr. Harrison. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said when he answered, his voice heavy with sleep, "for seeing what no one else did." "That's the thing about getting old," he replied after a moment. "Everyone thinks you stop seeing clearly, but sometimes you just start noticing different things." 3 months later, when they finally caught the woman who had been living in Morgan's house, Detective Carter would remember those words. The woman had been found in another home, in another state, living another life. Her real name was never discovered. Her motives remained unclear. But in her possession was a notebook containing detailed observations of dozens of women's daily routines, spanning back nearly a decade. And on the final page, a single sentence written in careful script: "No one really sees each other anymore. No one notices when you're not who you're supposed to be." Story 7, the invitation was elegant, written in delicate script, inviting her to a grand estate for dinner. The address was clear, the instructions precise. But when she arrived, the lot was nothing but empty fields, and someone had left her own name carved into the ground. Detective Morgan Ellis stood at the edge of the bare field, his weathered leather shoes collecting dew from the tall grass. The morning fog had just begun to lift, revealing the strange, precise lettering etched into the soil: Eliza Winter. The name stretched nearly 6 feet across, each letter carefully formed as if drawn by an architect rather than scraped hastily into dirt. The manila folder in Ellis's hand contained a single item: the invitation that had brought Eliza Winter to this empty lot 3 nights ago. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind used for wedding announcements or formal galas. The handwriting flowed across the cream-colored surface with practiced elegance. "The honor of your presence is requested at Lakeview Estate, 1740 Harmon Road, for dinner and conversation. 8 o'clock. Come alone." But 1740 Harmon Road didn't exist. The numbers on the rural route jumped from 1732 to 1748, skipping over what should have been the address of a grand estate. There was only this field, the distant tree line, and the unsettling carving of a missing woman's name. "How long has she been gone?" asked Officer Patel, her voice quiet enough not to disturb the strange stillness of the scene. 72 hours, Ellis replied, not looking up from the invitation. He turned it over carefully, examining the paper for any mark, any clue. Her roommate reported it when she didn't come home that night. Said Eliza had been excited about the invitation, thought it might be from a secret admirer. The sound of a pen scratching against paper filled the brief silence as Patel made notes. A crow called from somewhere in the distance, its voice carrying across the empty field in waves that seemed to echo long after the bird had gone quiet. Ellis knelt down, his knee cracking slightly as it bent, and studied the carved letters more closely. The edges were crisp, the soil displaced with precision. This wasn't done with a stick or a hurried tool. Someone had taken their time, perhaps hours, to create this disturbing message. "The lab says the invitation doesn't have any fingerprints except for Eliza's and her roommate's," Patel said, flipping through her own notes. "Papers available at any high-end stationery store, nothing traceable." Ellis nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the name in the dirt. Whoever did this knew her, knew she would come, knew she wouldn't tell anyone else about it. Back at the station, the gentle hum of fluorescent lights created a cocoon of sound around Ellis's desk. The coffee in his mug had grown cold hours ago, but he still absently raised it to his lips occasionally, grimacing each time at the bitter, room-temperature liquid. Photographs of the field were spread before him, the carved name captured from various angles, looking somehow more ominous in the flat images than it had in person. Eliza Winter smiled from her driver's license photo, clipped to the corner of Ellis's desk. 27 years old, librarian at the university, no criminal record, no known enemies. Her life appeared to be as ordinary as the lives of most people who suddenly disappear never are. The soft click of the archive room door opening drew Ellis's attention. Archivist Helen Moss shuffled toward him, a thin folder balanced in her arms. Her voice was soft, measured, as if she were still in her domain of whispers and careful silence. "I found something," she said, placing the folder gently on his desk. "It's not much, but there was another case about 15 years ago. A man received an invitation to a non-existent address. When he arrived, he found his name carved into the ground." Ellis felt the skin on his arms tighten slightly. What happened to him? He was found 3 days later in the river. The official ruling was suicide, but the detective noted some inconsistencies, nothing concrete enough to pursue. The weight of those words settled between them like a physical presence. Ellis opened the folder carefully, as if it might contain something more dangerous than paper. The photographs inside were grainy, the technology of 15 years ago not capturing the scene with the clarity of modern cameras. But there it was, another name, another empty field. "The invitation," Ellis said, scanning the report. "Was it similar?" Helen nodded, almost identical in wording. Different address, of course, but the same promise of dinner at an estate that didn't exist. That night, as Ellis drove home, the headlights of passing cars created rhythmic patterns of light and shadow across his face. The steady sound of tires on asphalt provided a backdrop to his circling thoughts. 2 cases 15 years apart, 2 invitations to nowhere, 1 victim confirmed dead, another missing. His phone rang, the sound jarring in the quiet car. Officer Patel's voice came through the speaker, tight with urgency. "We found something in Eliza's email. 3 weeks ago, she was researching a local historical society project. She was looking into the history of land ownership in the county." Ellis's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Did she find something? Maybe she requested access to records about a property dispute from the 1920s, something about the Harmon family and a contested will. The name registered immediately. Harmon, the road where we found the carving. "Yes," Patel confirmed, "and there's something else. The disputed property was supposed to contain a large estate called Lakeview. The same name that had been on the invitation." Ellis felt a chill that had nothing to do with the car's air conditioning. The county records building was nearly empty the next morning, save for an elderly clerk who seemed surprised to have visitors so early. The records of the Harmon dispute were stored in a climate-controlled room that smelled of old paper and preservation chemicals. "Here it is," the clerk said, placing a bound volume on the table. "The Harmon estate dispute of 1924. Nasty business." Ellis and Patel pored over the documents, the faded ink and formal legal language gradually revealing a story of betrayal and hidden wealth. Jonathan Harmon had died suddenly, leaving his estate to a previously unknown second family. His first family contested the will, claiming forgery and manipulation. The dispute had dragged on for years, with accusations of corruption and evidence tampering. "Look at this," Patel said, pointing to a newspaper clipping tucked between the pages. The judge who ruled in favor of the second family was found dead a week after his decision, apparent suicide. "And the second family?" Ellis asked. "They never got to enjoy their inheritance. The house burned down before they could take possession. All 3 family members died in the fire." The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, but one that still didn't explain why Eliza Winter had been lured to an empty field, or where she might be now. The answer came 3 days later from a surprising source. The university library where Eliza worked called to report that her computer login had been used the previous night, long after the library had closed. Security footage showed a dark figure at Eliza's workstation, face obscured by a hood. The figure had accessed a single File A scan of an old map showing the original boundaries of the Harmon property, including the location of Lakeview Estate. "The building's foundation should still be there," Ellis said, studying the overlaid maps on his computer screen. "It would be right here." He pointed to a spot near where they had found Eliza's name carved into the ground. That evening, as the sun began to set, Ellis and a team of officers returned to the field on Harmon Road. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what the old maps had suggested: the remnants of a large structure lay beneath the soil, buried by time and deliberate obscurity. And as they scanned further from the foundation, they found something else. A disturbance in the soil pattern, approximately 6 feet long and 3 feet wide, fresh enough to stand out clearly on the radar imaging. The excavation began as the last light faded from the sky. Floodlights cast harsh illumination over the scene, creating deep shadows that seemed to shift and move at the edges of vision. Every shovelful of dirt was removed with care, every layer documented. They found Eliza Winter 3 feet down, her body carefully arranged, hands crossed over her chest. She wore an evening dress, as if prepared for the dinner she had been promised, and clutched in her hand was another invitation, identical to the one that had lured her here, but addressed to someone new. The case didn't end with Eliza's discovery. It expanded, revealing a pattern stretching back decades: invitations, disappearances, bodies found with new invitations in hand. A chain of death linked to a property dispute nearly a century old. The final piece fell into place when Ellis traced the elaborate handwriting on the invitations to a calligraphy teacher at the university, the great-granddaughter of Jonathan Harmon's first wife, carrying on what she saw as justice for a family wronged. She didn't resist when they came for her. She sat at her desk, pen in hand, another invitation half completed before her. She looked up at Ellis with calm eyes, as if she had been expecting him all along. "They stole what was ours," she said simply. "Every invitation returns a small piece of what was taken." As they led her away, Ellis noticed the names in her address book, dozens of them, each carefully selected, each a descendant of someone involved in the original dispute. Names waiting to receive their elegant invitations to an address that didn't exist. And somewhere, perhaps, one had already been sent. Story 8, the rent was cheap and the building was old, but she didn't mind. Her roommate was quiet, rarely home, until one day she found a locked door in the hallway. The landlord looked confused. "There's no other room in your apartment." The afternoon light filtered through the dusty blinds of Detective Sarah Morrison's office, casting long, slanted shadows across the decades-old case files spread across her desk. Outside, the soft patter of early autumn rain created a gentle rhythm against the windows, a natural metronome keeping time as she carefully turned each yellowed page. The Westbrook apartment complex case had gone cold 15 years ago, but something about it continued to pull at her consciousness, like a half-remembered dream that refuses to fade with morning light. The detective's fingers traced over the black and white photograph of Elaine Mercer, a 26-year-old graduate student who had moved into apartment 3B at the Westbrook in September of 2008. The building stood on the edge of town, an aging four-story structure with creaking floors and outdated fixtures, but the rent was affordable for a student on a tight budget, especially one willing to share the space with a roommate. She seemed so ordinary, Morrison whispered to the empty room, her voice barely audible above the rain, just trying to make ends meet while finishing her degree. According to the original police reports, Elaine had responded to an advertisement for a roommate posted by the landlord, Mr. Vernon Hayes. The previous tenant, a woman named Claire, had apparently moved out unexpectedly, leaving her portion of the rent unpaid. Hayes had been eager to fill the vacancy quickly. Claire was a ghost from the beginning, Morrison murmured, reviewing her notes. No one in the building remembered meeting Claire. No mail had ever arrived for her. No employment records or previous addresses could be found. It was as if Claire had never existed at all. For the first 2 months, everything had seemed normal. Elaine's statements described a quiet living arrangement. Her roommate worked nights, they rarely crossed paths, and communication was limited to brief notes left on the refrigerator. Elaine had never found this unusual graduate studies kept her busy, and she appreciated the solitude. The detective lifted a thin evidence bag containing a small collection of these notes, written on pale blue paper in neat, precise handwriting. Use the last of the milk, will replace tomorrow. Package came for you, left it on your bed. Turn the heat down, too warm. Simple, mundane communications, nothing that would raise alarm. Until November 14th, when Elaine had called the maintenance office about a persistent draft in the hallway. While waiting for the building superintendent to arrive, she had noticed something she'd somehow overlooked during her 2 months of residence, a door at the end of the hallway, partially hidden behind a tall bookcase. The recording of her call to the landlord still existed in the evidence files. Morrison pressed play on the small recorder, and Elaine's voice filled the silent office, tinny and distant through the old speaker. Mr. Hayes, it's Elaine from 3B. I found a locked door in our apartment. No, not my bedroom or the bathroom. It's in the hallway behind the bookcase. What do you mean there's no other room? The floor plan. I don't understand. The detective switched off the recording, allowing the room to fall back into the gentle percussion of raindrops. She carefully removed another photograph from the file, the apartment floor plan, clearly showing only 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. No additional space, no mysterious hallway, no hidden door. Yet when police had arrived the following day, after receiving a concerned call from Elaine's mother reporting that her daughter wasn't answering her phone, they found exactly what Elaine had described. A narrow hallway extending past what should have been the outer wall of the building, ending in a locked door that required forced entry. Behind that door, they discovered a small, windowless room, a room that, according to the building's architectural plans, should not exist. The room contained a neatly made bed, a small desk with a journal, and a closet filled with women's clothing. On the desk sat a framed photograph of 2 young women standing together in front of the Westbrook building. One was clearly Elaine. The other was unfamiliar to anyone who knew her. Morrison picked up the evidence bag containing the journal found in that impossible room. The first entry was dated 6 months before Elaine had ever moved into the apartment. My new roommate moves in tomorrow. I've made space for her things. I hope we'll get along well, though I prefer to keep to myself. The landlord doesn't know I'm still here, and I'd like to keep it that way. The rent is affordable when shared, after all. The entries continued, detailing observations about Elaine's habits, her schedule, the phone calls she made when she thought she was alone. The final entry was dated November 13th, the day before Elaine discovered the door. She's noticed the draft. It's getting harder to move around unseen. I may have to introduce myself properly soon. Elaine Mercer was never found. Her personal belongings remained in her bedroom, her car in its designated parking space. Her bank accounts went untouched. Her final tuition payment for the semester had cleared the day before her disappearance. The detective gently closed the file, watching as dust particles danced in the fading afternoon light. The original investigation had centered on Mr. Hayes, the landlord, but his confusion had seemed genuine. The architectural impossibility of the room had never been adequately explained. The identity of Claire, if she had ever existed at all, remained unknown. The rain continued its soft rhythm against the glass as darkness slowly claimed the office. Morrison didn't reach for the lamp. Sometimes shadows made it easier to see the shape of a mystery, to feel the contours of what remained hidden. 3 weeks after Elaine's disappearance, a young woman had answered an advertisement for apartment 3B at the Westbrook. The landlord had seemed relieved to rent it so quickly. The new tenant had been told she would have the place to herself. But sometimes, late at night, she would mention to friends that she could hear someone moving in the hallway, opening and closing doors that weren't there. She would find notes on pale blue paper telling her that someone had used the last of the milk but would replace it tomorrow. The case remained open, one of many that Detective Morrison revisited on quiet, rainy afternoons when the light fell just so across her desk, and the shadows in the corner of her office seemed to suggest the outline of a door that wasn't there yesterday. A door that perhaps had always been waiting to be noticed. Story 9. The mist hung low over Harrow County that October morning, clinging to the cornfields like a whisper reluctant to fade. Sheriff Eli Mercer's boots crunched against the frost-covered ground as he followed Farmer Roy Blackwood across the eastern field. The sheriff's breath formed small clouds in the cold air, dissipating slowly as they walked in silence. Roy hadn't said much since his call to the station at 5:43 a.m., just that the sheriff needed to see something for himself. "Over there," Roy finally said, pointing with a weathered hand toward the far corner of his property where the cornfield met the tree line. His voice was steady but thin, like a man trying not to acknowledge his own fear. As they approached, the morning light began to filter through the mist, illuminating what at first appeared to be strange, pale mushrooms sprouting from the dark soil. But with each step closer, Sheriff Mercer felt a heaviness growing in his chest. These weren't mushrooms. They were faces, human faces, emerging from the ground as if the earth itself was giving birth to them. "Found the first one 3 days ago," Roy said, his eyes fixed on the ground. "Thought it was some kind of prank, kids maybe, Halloween coming up and all." He paused, rubbing his calloused hands together for warmth. But then there were more the next morning, and even more yesterday. Sheriff Mercer knelt beside the nearest formation. It was remarkably detailed, a woman's face, eyes closed as if in peaceful slumber, her features perfectly sculpted from the soil. Her lips were slightly parted as though about to speak. He resisted the urge to touch it, instead pulling a small notebook from his jacket pocket and jotting down his observations. The scratch of his pen against paper was the only sound besides their breathing. "Have you told anyone else about this?" Mercer asked, his voice deliberately measured. Roy shook his head. "Just Martha, my wife. She wanted to call the pastor, but..." He trailed off, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "This ain't natural, Sheriff." By noon, the field had been cordoned off with yellow police tape that fluttered gently in the autumn breeze. Detective Anna Walsh from the county seat arrived just after 11, her sedan raising dust on the long driveway leading to the Blackwood farm. Sheriff Mercer watched her approach, noting the purposeful way she surveyed the scene before even getting out of her car. 12 of them, Mercer said by way of greeting as Walsh joined him by the field's edge. All different faces. Men, women, no children, thank God. Detective Walsh nodded, pulling on latex gloves with practiced precision. "Forensics team will be here within the hour," she said. "Any idea how long they've been here?" According to Blackwood, the first appeared 3 days ago. New ones keep appearing overnight. Walsh raised an eyebrow. "Appearing? You mean someone's coming here at night and making these?" Mercer shrugged. "That's the assumption, though Blackwood swears his dog would bark if anyone came onto the property." Together they walked the perimeter of the affected area, a roughly circular patch about 30 feet in diameter. The faces all seemed to emerge from the soil at the same height, as if resting just below the surface. Some appeared peaceful, others troubled, their expressions frozen in various states of emotion. "It would take hours to create these," Walsh murmured, crouching beside a particularly detailed sculpture of an elderly man, his face lined with wrinkles and his brow furrowed. "And the craftsmanship, this isn't amateur work." The forensics team arrived and began photographing and taking samples. Dr. Alina Reed, the county's only forensic anthropologist, spent a long time examining each face, her expression growing more troubled with each inspection. "These aren't just random," she finally said, peeling off her gloves as the afternoon light began to fade. "Look at the bone structure, the specific asymmetries. These are real people." A chill that had nothing to do with the October air settled over Sheriff Mercer. "You mean they're based on real people?" Dr. Reed shook her head. "I mean these are accurate representations of actual individuals. The level of detail is, well, it's like looking at death masks, except made of soil instead of plaster." By evening, the first match had been found. A face in the northwestern corner of the circle belonged to Eliza Cartwright, a woman from the neighboring county who had been reported missing 18 months earlier. Her case had gone cold after weeks of fruitless searching. 3 days later, they had identified 4 more. Thomas Brenner, missing since 2019. Maria Vasquez, who disappeared while hiking in 2020. James Holloway, last seen at a gas station in 2018. And Diane Mitchell, whose car was found abandoned by the state highway in 2021. All cold cases, all unsolved disappearances. The media caught wind of the story on day 5. By day 6, the small road leading to the Blackwood farm was lined with news vans and curious onlookers. Sheriff Mercer established a perimeter half a mile from the property, with deputies posted around the clock. "We're looking at a serial killer," Detective Walsh said during their nightly briefing in the makeshift command center they'd established in Blackwood's barn. The walls were now covered with photos and maps, the faces from the field matched with missing persons cases spanning 5 counties in 7 years. Someone who's been operating undetected all this time, and who now wants us to find the bodies. "But why?" asked Deputy Collins, the youngest member of the force. Why lead us to them now? No one had an answer. The nights grew colder, and each morning new faces appeared in the field despite the constant surveillance. Cameras mysteriously malfunctioned between 2 and 4 a.m. Motion sensors triggered but revealed nothing on playback. The faces continued to grow. On the 10th day, they began to dig. Under each face, exactly 6 feet down, they found a body. Each victim had been buried with care, their hands folded over their chests, wearing the same clothes described in their missing persons reports. There were no signs of trauma, no obvious cause of death. Toxicology would later reveal the presence of a rare paralytic agent in their systems, one that would have rendered them immobile but conscious as they were buried alive, their lungs slowly filling with soil as they gasped for air. The case broke open on day 14 when a soil sample analysis revealed trace elements unique to a fertilizer blend that had been discontinued 5 years earlier. Only one local farm had purchased it in bulk before the product was pulled from the market. Green River Nursery, owned by Harold Preston, a soft-spoken man known for his remarkable botanical sculptures displayed at the county fair each year. Preston's property yielded a workshop filled with detailed clay models of faces, dozens of them, each labeled with names and dates. In his greenhouse, they discovered plants growing in soil mixtures containing human ashes. His journal detailed his belief that human remains made his plants more vibrant, more alive, that he was giving them new purpose by incorporating them into his art. When they finally arrested him, Preston was in his garden, tenderly shaping a new face from the soil. He looked up at the officers with serene eyes and simply said, "They're not dead, you know. They're just growing into something more beautiful." Harold Preston was found unfit to stand trial and committed to a state psychiatric facility. The 17 bodies recovered from Blackwood's farm were finally laid to rest in proper graves with real headstones bearing their names. Sheriff Mercer still drives by the Blackwood farm sometimes, in the early hours when the mist hangs low over the fields. He can't help but slow down and look toward that corner where the cornfield meets the tree line. The area has been plowed over, planted with new crops, life continuing as it must. But in his dreams, he still sees those faces staring up at the sky with empty eyes. And sometimes, when he wakes in the dark of night, he swears he can feel the soil shifting beneath his home, as if something new is waiting to sprout. Story 10. The old costume shop was in its final days, clearing out its dusty relics. Among the forgotten treasures, a woman's hand reached for a mask perched on a forgotten shelf. Its delicate features held a disconcerting lifelike quality that lingered in the dimly lit store. When she approached the cashier with the mask in hand, a shadow of uncertainty passed over his face. "That's not one of ours," he murmured, puzzled. The woman checked for a tag but found none, a mystery in itself. Without much thought, she decided to take the mask home with her. That night, a gentle rustling sound stirred her from slumber. The woman, Catherine Reed, opened her eyes to find the mask had vanished from the dresser where she had left it. Instead, it now perched on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her as if it held a secret only she could unravel. It was her neighbor who stumbled upon the chilling scene the next morning. The front door stood slightly ajar, allowing a sliver of daylight to pierce the darkness of Catherine's home. Expecting to return a borrowed book, the neighbor was met with a sight that sent shivers down their spine. Catherine lay lifeless on her bedroom floor, the mysterious mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene as forensics began their meticulous work. The rhythmic clicks of the camera shutters provided an eerie backdrop to the somber task at hand. An officer remarked on the absence of forced entry while jotting down notes. The detective's keen eyes scanned the room, noticing subtle details that whispered of a sinister presence. An open drawer, a lipstick-stained glass of water, mundane yet out of place in the tragedy that had unfolded. The medical examiner's examination yielded no immediate answers. No visible wounds, no signs of a struggle, only the frozen terror etched onto Catherine's features. The detective's hushed voice broke the silence. Something frightened her to her core. Catherine, known for her discerning eye as an art appraiser, had lived a quiet existence until her untimely demise. Colleagues spoke of her expertise in spotting forgeries, a skill that may have unknowingly sealed her fate. Could her knack for detecting authenticity have led her down a path from which there was no return? The trail led back to the costume shop, where security footage unveiled a perplexing exchange. The cashier's confusion over the mask was evident, prompting a consultation with the shop owner, who disavowed any knowledge of it. A visit to the now barren shop revealed a tale of mysterious acquisitions from an estate sale fraught with peculiar circumstances. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers were discovered on Catherine's fingertips. The peculiar blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance hinted at a macabre connection to something beyond comprehension. Each thread woven into a tapestry of inexplicable deaths linked to the acquisition of enigmatic masks. Retired detectives shared a revelation from the past, a ritualistic element tied to the masks, concealed messages hinting at a sinister purpose. Catherine's own journal, unearthed from a hidden alcove, unveiled her descent into a world of dread and paranoia. Her frantic entries spoke of a malevolent force lurking within the mask, a harbinger of doom seeking a new vessel to inhabit. As the investigation deepened, a chilling truth emerged. Catherine's demise was not a mere accident, but a calculated act of terror. The mask, a conduit for ancient malevolence, preyed on those who dared to uncover its dark origins. Surveillance footage, a crucial oversight, captured a figure leaving Catherine's home in the dead of night, wearing the mask like a macabre facade. The phantom presence mimicked her movements with an unnatural precision, a ghastly imitation of life itself. Despite efforts to track down the elusive mask, it remained elusive, slipping through the cracks of time and space to resurface in a distant vintage shop. Its allure proved irresistible, passing from one unsuspecting owner to the next, perpetuating a cycle of fear and death. The detective, keeper of Catherine's cryptic journal, knows the truth that lurks in the shadows. Night after night, she awakens to a sense of foreboding, a reminder of the malevolent force that may one day seek her out. The mask, a silent sentinel of dread, bides its time, waiting to ensnare another unwitting soul in its unending dance of terror and tragedy. Story 11. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Yet a sense of unease crept in. Her visage appeared normal, her attire unchanged. However, a lingering disquiet simmered within her. A flicker caught in the corner of her vision, a motion that defied explanation. As she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. The enigma of Rebecca Thorne commenced with that eerie incident in her bathroom. What transpired next would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave. Known to be methodical and reserved, she kept to herself while maintaining a courteous relationship with her neighbors. A data analyst by profession, her days were consumed by routine and precision. Nothing about her demeanor hinted at her inevitable role as the focal point of one of the most enigmatic criminal inquiries of the era. The initial signs were subtle. Rebecca noticed minor displacements of objects in her living space, nothing missing, merely rearranged. A mug shifted to a different shelf, books realigned, her toothbrush placed on the wrong side of the sink. Initially brushing these anomalies off as lapses of memory, she attributed them to the strain of long hours spent poring over spreadsheets beneath harsh fluorescent lights, blurring her vision. Detective Marion Shaw received the first formal complaint when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. The initial assessment leaned towards a mental health concern rather than a criminal matter, with no tangible evidence of foul play. Shaw documented the grievance but relegated it to the stack of low-priority cases. No concrete evidence, Shaw later testified. No signs of forced entry, missing items, or broken locks. Just a woman sensing an unsettling presence in her home. The pivotal moment arrived with the bathroom mirror episode. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca recounted the eerie experience in vivid detail, the sensation of her reflection moving independently, the unshakable feeling of being observed even in solitude. This time, she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, aimed at her front entrance. The recording unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed by an identical figure using a key to enter her apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic analysts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, finding none. The intruder moved and dressed identically to Rebecca, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, according to time-stamped footage from her workplace security system, Rebecca had already swiped into her office building miles away. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with uncanny precision." The inquiry escalated. Fingerprints scattered across the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's. No foreign DNA was unearthed. Neighbors reported routine sightings of Rebecca, with no peculiar occurrences noted, just her usual comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, recollected greeting Rebecca upon her return one evening, receiving no reply, a departure from her typical behavior but not a cause for alarm. Rebecca commenced documenting the anomalies in a journal. Minor alterations within her dwelling multiplied. Vanishing food from her fridge she had no memory of consuming. Her computer displayed searches she hadn't initiated. Most disconcerting were the photos on her phone, self-portraits resembling her yet taken without her recollection. In some, her demeanor seemed subtly askew, the grin too wide or the gaze too intense. "I feel as if I'm descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating my descent." The breakthrough surfaced when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined activities with predictable durations. "The intruder possesses intimate knowledge of your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's a focused surveillance and infiltration scheme." A forensic psychologist proposed a fixation hypothesis, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such cases, though rare, were documented in psychological archives. The culprit often endured a mental rupture, fixating on a target embodying attributes they craved: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The investigation honed in when Rebecca mentioned a former coworker, Lily Winters, dismissed for escalating erratic conduct. Lily and Rebecca had collaborated closely, with Lily frequently remarking on their similarities. Post-termination, Lily dispatched a series of unsettling emails to Rebecca. "We could be interchangeable," one message read. "At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to scour Lily's residence. The revelations within metamorphosed the case from unsettling to chilling. A room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls adorned with photographs, countless snapshots of Rebecca entering her apartment, shopping, socializing, all captured unbeknownst to her. A wardrobe housing precise replicas of Rebecca's attire. Makeup matching Rebecca's preferences arranged on a vanity alongside meticulous notes on her behaviors, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most incriminating were the practice videos Lily mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was apparent, initial attempts crude and conspicuous, later ones nearly indistinguishable from the authentic Rebecca. "She aspired to become me," Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. "She wasn't merely imitating me, she was obliterating me." Forensic experts unearthed advanced tools for crafting key duplicates and replicating electronic access cards. Lily had maintained an intricate system for monitoring Rebecca's movements, including a calendar forecasting her schedule in detail. What eluded investigators was Lily's ultimate motive. Journals uncovered in her residence contained incoherent entries oscillating between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as both me and her within the same paragraph. The final entry sent chills down their spines. "Soon, only one of us shall endure. The stronger entity shall prevail." Upon authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished without a trace. Her vacated apartment bore signs of a hurried exit, drawers ajar, certain items missing. A nationwide alert was disseminated. Rebecca was relocated to a secure facility under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, every location linked to her former existence was under scrutiny. Lily remained elusive. The saga took a disconcerting twist when a security guard at Rebecca's prior workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca had been sighted entering the building despite being on leave. Surveillance footage corroborated the account. A figure mirroring Rebecca had accessed the premises using a valid ID card, proceeding to her former workstation and perusing her files for 40 minutes before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca resided in a safe-guarded safe house, rendering her presence at the office impossible. The revelation was stark. Lily hadn't fled, she had made her move. Living as Rebecca, she had seamlessly assumed her identity while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case lingers unresolved. Lily Winters remains at large. Rebecca Thorne opted not to reclaim her past life, forging a new identity in undisclosed quarters. Detective Shaw retains a photograph on her desk, a striking resemblance between two women. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other is Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, the subtleties that would differentiate one from the other. The truly chilling aspect Shaw often imparts to new recruits isn't someone looking or sounding like you. It's their fervent desire to become you, erasing themselves in the process. Identity isn't solely our outward facade, it's our most guarded possession, and sometimes its true worth is realized only when someone endeavors to steal it. Story 12. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded borders, a relic of a forgotten birthday celebration. Faces frozen in time, candles flickering innocently, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. Yet as the daughter sifted through the box of memories left behind by her mother, she noticed it. a presence lurking in the background of each photograph, a man shrouded in mystery, standing just beyond the glow of the candles. He was not a familiar face, not a part of the family festivities. And yet with each passing photo, he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. The box, simply labeled Memories, held a treasure trove of moments captured in faded hues, documenting joyous family gatherings from her childhood. What should have been a comforting find turned into the unraveling of a chilling enigma. In the initial photo, he was a mere shadow at the periphery, a specter lingering at the edge of her 7th birthday party frame. The dark figure loomed near the glass door, his features obscured, silently observing. In the subsequent photo, he had shifted closer, moving inside the room. By the 3rd snapshot, he stood ominously behind her uncle, unnoticed by the oblivious subjects. With trembling hands, Sarah phoned her father, her voice quivering as she recounted the unsettling revelation. "Dad, who is this man haunting these pictures?" A heavy silence followed her inquiry, broken only by a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone but family," her father finally replied. Detective Marcus Reed sat across from Sarah as she laid out the eerie photographs on his desk at the precinct. Raindrops tapped against the window panes, casting dancing shadows over the evidence. The detective's experienced gaze traced the progression of the mysterious figure through the snapshots, his interest piqued by the inexplicable presence. As Sarah narrated the unnerving sequence of events, the detective's scrutiny intensified. The shadowy figure's calculated movements, advancing closer to the children in each photo, painted a sinister portrait. In the final image, he loomed directly behind Sarah's youthful self, a ghostly hand outstretched towards her shoulder, just beyond the frame. Reed speculated, suggesting the photographer's involvement, but doubt lingered in his voice. "My mother took these photos. She set the timer and joined the group," Sarah clarified. The detective meticulously documented the case, initiating a thorough investigation that unearthed more questions than answers. Days passed as Reed delved deeper, reaching out to surviving attendees of the party. No one recalled the enigmatic man. No hired help, no unexpected guests, just a secluded countryside setting chosen for privacy. Facial recognition technology faltered, unable to unmask the elusive figure strategically obscured in every frame, as if evading the lens deliberately. The breakthrough came when Sarah uncovered additional photos from different family gatherings spanning various years. The figure persisted, a haunting presence in the background, unnoticed by all in real time. A tech specialist enhanced the images, revealing hidden details: a scar, a ring, a faint reflection hinting at a face previously shrouded in darkness. Dental records provided the crucial link. The teeth visible in one enhanced photo matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker implicated in unsolved child abductions from decades past. Keller had vanished after being questioned in connection with the disappearances that coincided with the gatherings captured in the photos. Authorities excavated Keller's former residence, unearthing chilling artifacts buried beneath the concrete. A hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, all belonging to the missing children whose cases had long gone cold. Sarah recognized her lost bracelet among the retrieved items, a grim confirmation of the horrors concealed behind the façade of cherished family memories. Alone in her apartment, Sarah reflected on the chilling revelations that had shattered the illusion of safety preserved in those photographs. The detective's call earlier confirming the identification of remains near one of the vacation properties echoed in her mind. DNA had matched one of the long-lost children, bringing closure to a chapter of unspeakable tragedies. Staring at the final birthday photo, Sarah pondered the enigmatic figure looming behind her younger self, an unsettling presence overlooked in the bliss of celebration. The shadow, once hidden in plain sight, had finally been exposed to the light of justice, his malevolent legacy unveiled. As she carefully packed away the photos, now transformed into evidence of a harrowing truth, Sarah understood that some dangers lurk unseen, captured in frozen moments of time. The hidden figures that move undetected through joyous occasions, leaving behind only a faint trace of their ominous existence, serve as a stark reminder of the shadows that dwell within the familiar corners of memory. Story 13. The parcel arrived without warning, a mysterious gift wrapped in secrecy. No return label, no tracking number, just a plain cardboard box touched by the morning dew. It was not meant for Sarah Miller. The name on it was a stranger's. She hesitated, the rational part of her urging to leave it untouched on the porch. But curiosity, that insatiable whisper, urged her to uncover its secrets. With gentle hands, she peeled back the tape, expecting mundane contents like books or clothes. Instead, nestled within was a VHS tape, accompanied by a lone sticky note bearing a simple command: watch alone. Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, its weight feeling heavier than mere plastic. It seemed to carry a gravity, a forbidden aura. Her fingers traced the edges, feeling the history etched into the worn casing. The note, bearing the imprint of urgency, hinted at a story waiting to be unraveled. As she stood in her kitchen, the suburban sounds of everyday life drifted in the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of children, the steady hum of a lawnmower. Unaware of the enigma that had just entered her world, she carried the package inside, placing it on the counter, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance to her. She had dwelled in her home for years, never encountering that name before. The tape beckoned to her, a mystery cloaked in black plastic. Against her instincts, Sarah inserted the tape into her old VCR. Static flickered on the screen before sharpening into focus a dimly lit room, a man seated in a wooden chair, his face initially shrouded in shadow. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," his voice, quiet yet resolute, filled the room. "If you're watching this, they found you, which means they'll find me too." His weary face emerged from the darkness, bearing the weight of sleepless nights and unrelenting vigilance. "I didn't kill her," he continued, desperation lacing his words. "I need you to know that. They planted evidence, framed me for a crime I didn't commit." The camera's angle shifted, revealing the stark room around him, a temporary sanctuary for a man on the run. "I never met Catherine Walsh until her face flashed on the news, murdered in her own home, my DNA inexplicably present at the crime scene." Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in a web of deceit as she watched the identical tapes surface, each bearing Whitaker's plea of innocence. The murder of Catherine Walsh, once a closed case, now unfurled layers of conspiracy. Walsh's involvement in exposing PharmaCorp's corruption shed light on a sinister truth, a truth powerful enough to orchestrate a frame-up. The detective's investigation unearthed shadows of doubt, perfectly placed DNA evidence, rehearsed witness testimonies, corrupted surveillance footage. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, Sarah received a second package, revealing the damning truth documents implicating PharmaCorp in a cover-up, corroborating Catherine's suspicions. Whitaker's breadcrumb trail led them to a storage unit, where hidden truths awaited diaries detailing the conspiracy, Catherine's evidence, and a sinister plan to frame an innocent man. Justice, elusive yet unyielding, found its way through the unearthing of undeniable evidence. Executives fell, the head of security confessed, and the truth prevailed. Whitaker, freed from the shackles of false accusation, emerged from the shadows a changed man. Sarah and Whitaker met once more, pondering the thin line between justice and manufactured lies. The wrong address turned out to be exactly the right one, Sarah remarked, a testament to fate's curious hand. The VHS tapes, once harbingers of mystery, now stood as symbols of truth revealed in unexpected ways. And as Sarah returned Whitaker's tape, they understood that sometimes the journey to truth begins with a package delivered to the wrong hands. Story 14. In the heart of the city, there was a quaint coffee shop that held a secret within its walls. For years, a mysterious man frequented this place, his presence as consistent as the rising sun. Each day, he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee, and envelop himself in a shroud of silence. The barista, a silent witness to his routine, recognized his face but remained ignorant of his name. Then one fateful day, the man failed to make his usual appearance. Concerned, the police were summoned to investigate. Upon reaching his customary seat, they stumbled upon a peculiar discovery: a wallet left behind, a silent testament to his sudden absence. Inside the wallet lay a driver's license bearing a face but devoid of a name or address, an enigma in human form. As Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the case, she pored over the security footage with a furrowed brow. The man, now dubbed John Doe in the records, appeared unremarkable on camera, his actions mundane, his features unassuming. Yet his vanishing act defied all logic and reason, leaving a trail of bewilderment in its wake. Repeatedly, Mercer watched the footage, searching for a clue amidst the mundane scenes of the man's routine. Each playback revealed the same sequence: his entrance, his order, his quiet contemplation, and then his inexplicable disappearance. It was as though he had slipped through the cracks of reality itself. Demanding a closer examination, Mercer instructed the tech specialist to scrutinize every frame. Yet, to their astonishment, there was no trace of John Doe entering or exiting any restroom. It was as if he had crossed an invisible threshold into the void, leaving behind a perplexing mystery. Back at the station, Mercer sifted through the remnants of the man's life contained within the wallet. Blank spaces replaced his identity, credit cards bore no names, and a cryptic phone number hinted at elusive connections. A receipt from the coffee shop, a stack of cash, and a lone business card, all pointing towards a void of information and a void of existence. The barista, a humble observer of the man's presence, offered sparse details about his silent patron. Always alone, always engrossed in his writings, the man had left no trace of personal connections or conversations. His presence was as fleeting as a whisper in the wind. The notebook left behind, a cryptic artifact of his essence, baffled even the most seasoned cryptographers. Its pages brimmed with inscrutable symbols and sketches of unearthly buildings, hinting at a reality beyond comprehension. Mercer's investigation led her down a labyrinth of unanswered questions, each turn revealing more layers to the enigma of John Doe. As the tendrils of the mystery tightened their grip, Mercer noticed a peculiar anomaly in the security footage: a flicker in time, a glitch in the fabric of reality. Returning to the coffee shop, she positioned herself at his table, eyes tracing the path of his disappearance. And there, amidst the mundane surroundings, she encountered a relic of forgotten lore: a mirror, ancient and ornate, harboring secrets within its reflective surface. Questioning, the shop owner unveiled the mirror's ancient origins, its purpose shrouded in mystery. And as Mercer gazed into its depths, she sensed a whisper of warmth, a hint of the extraordinary concealed within the mundane. The mirror, a gateway between worlds, beckoned with promises of the unknown. When the forensics team uncovered a hidden compartment behind the mirror, the truth began to unfurl like a delicate blossom. Wallets identical to the one left behind, a journal chronicling decades of existence, and fingerprints that echoed through time, all pointing towards a singular truth. John Doe, a man of many mysteries, was a mere fragment of a larger enigma. The journal's cryptic entries spoke of temporal experiments, of realities converging at a nexus point, the coffee shop. Mercer's understanding expanded, her perceptions shifting as she delved deeper into the rabbit hole of impossibility. The man who didn't exist was a key to a doorway that transcended the boundaries of the known. As the investigation spiraled into the realm of the uncanny, reports of spectral sightings and eerie phenomena haunted the coffee shop's patrons. Reflections moved of their own accord, whispers of the past echoed through the present, and the enigma of John Doe loomed large over the unsuspecting world. A chance encounter with an elderly physicist unveiled the man's true identity, Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to the mysteries of quantum mirrors and parallel realities. His disappearance, a testament to his experiments gone awry, cast a shadow over the investigation, revealing the fragility of the boundaries between worlds. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer unearthed the buried truths of Weston's past, a tapestry woven with threads of scientific curiosity and existential dread. The building stood as a monument to his legacy, a bridge between worlds that beckoned with promises of the unknown. In the final moments of the investigation, Mercer witnessed a revelation that shattered the fragile veneer of reality. Two versions of the same man existing in tandem, caught in a dance of duality. John Doe, Daniel Weston, a singular entity split between worlds, a ghost of the past and a specter of the present. And as Mercer stood amidst the shards of the broken mirror, a note whispered of closure, of an experiment concluded, of a window sealed shut. The man who didn't exist slipped beyond the veil of reality, leaving behind a legacy of enigmas and unanswered questions. The case of the man who defied existence remained an enigma, a tale whispered in hushed tones, a mystery that lingered in the shadows of memory. The coffee shop, a silent witness to the unfolding drama, closed its doors, its secrets buried beneath the rubble of time. And as the echoes of the investigation faded into the night, Mercer found solace in the act of writing, in the pages of a notebook filled with cryptic musings. A fragment of an antique mirror adorned her wall, a reminder of the mysteries that lingered beyond the boundaries of perception. In the quiet hours of the night, whispers of a man who slipped between worlds echoed through the city, a ghostly presence haunting the edges of reality. And Detective Sarah Mercer, a seeker of truth in a world of shadows, found herself entwined in a tapestry of mysteries that defied explanation, a legacy of a man who didn't exist, a tale lost to the annals of time. Story 15: The Enigmatic Manor. The new owners brushed off the odd crackling of the old intercom system in their Victorian manner as a quirky relic of the past. Little did they know that it held secrets buried deep within its wires, waiting to be unraveled. Late one night, curiosity got the best of the husband, and he pressed the intercom button. A whisper, barely audible, crackled through the speaker, sending shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" it asked, a mysterious voice from the ether. Startled, he turned to his wife, only to hear her deny ever speaking those words. The air in the grand foyer seemed to thicken with an unseen presence, a silent witness to the unfolding mystery. The manor, nestled among ancient oak trees, exuded an aura of tranquility on the outside, but within its walls a dark history lurked, waiting to be uncovered. Daniel and Meredith Parker, the new owners, had been drawn to its charm, unaware of the darkness that lay dormant. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but as she stepped onto the graveled driveway, she sensed there was more to the story than met the eye. Daniel, with a haunted look in his eyes, led her inside, where the truth began to unfurl. It all started with the intercom, Daniel explained, his voice tinged with unease. Static, whispers, then full sentences. It's like the house is trying to tell us something. His wife, Meredith, sat pale and silent, her grip on a steaming mug betraying her inner turmoil. As they delved deeper, a hidden chamber behind a wall revealed a leather-bound journal belonging to a woman named Alina, the previous inhabitant of the manor. Her words spoke of fear and suspicion, hinting at a tragic fate that had befallen her. The investigation led to the discovery of Alina's remains buried beneath the garden shed, a grim confirmation of the sinister events that had transpired within the manor's walls. Vincent Blackwood, her husband, had long evaded justice, weaving a web of lies to conceal his heinous crime. Vincent's confession sent chills down the detective's spine, his calm demeanor belying the cruelty of his actions. He spoke of silencing Alina's voice, of craving the quiet that only death could bring. The truth, long buried, had finally come to light. The trial was swift, with Vincent admitting to his guilt, his sentence a small measure of justice for the life he had taken. The manor, now tainted by its dark past, bore witness to the reckoning that had come at last. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the manor's history, bid farewell to the place that had held them captive. As they left, a sense of closure settled upon the once enchanted grounds, now haunted by echoes of the past. The intercom, a conduit for the voices lost to time, was removed by the new owners, its whispers fading into the ether. But Detective Reeves, driving past the manor on her nightly rounds, could almost hear the faint murmur of a woman's voice, carried on the wind, a reminder that some secrets never truly rest. Story 16. The gentle current whispered secrets that morning, the water reflecting the sky like a flawless mirror. The fisherman's boat drifted lazily, almost lulled to sleep by the tranquil surroundings. His eyes, heavy with weariness, caught a glimpse of something unusual, a suitcase bobbing quietly near the shore. At first it seemed like a mere pile of discarded clothes, forgotten by the world. But as he drew near, a putrid odor tainted the air, thick and suffocating. The case was encased in chains, its once sharp edges now softened by rust and time. When officials pried it open, they were met with a haunting sight, not garments, but strands of hair clinging desperately to lifeless fingers. And at the bottom, a cryptic message: "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, a handkerchief pressed delicately against her nose to shield herself from the overwhelming scent of death. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, lay still on the muddy shore, her dark hair tangled and her pale skin marred by the touch of the water. The medical examiner worked meticulously, each movement deliberate as if honoring the life that had been lost. Mercer's gaze lingered not on the grisly display, but on the eerie sense of care that had been taken with the victim's appearance: manicured nails, recently styled hair, and garments that spoke of luxury. She was not discarded haphazardly, Mercer mused, her eyes following the rhythmic dance of the water against the shore. She was prepared, adorned. The victim was soon identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her expertise in selling prestigious properties. Divorced, childless, she led a solitary life in an affluent neighborhood. Her colleagues painted a portrait of a woman driven by ambition, meticulous in her ways and fiercely private. Her disappearance had been noted by her assistant, who spoke of her absence with a sense of disbelief. She would never miss such an important showing. It was meant to be her crowning achievement. As investigators delved into Walsh's meticulously curated life, they uncovered a world of precision and order. Her home was a sanctuary of perfection, every corner a testament to her meticulous nature. Yet a single drawer slightly ajar in her office revealed a crack in the facade. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages whispering secrets of a darker reality. The final entry bore witness to a silent terror. He's watching again. Same car, different plates. Clues unfurled like tendrils of smoke, leading Mercer down a shadowed path of obsession and fixation. Walsh's email held a trove of cryptic messages from unknown senders, all bearing the chilling phrase, "I see your perfection," sent at precise intervals. Her online searches hinted at a growing paranoia, a fear that lingered like a specter in the night. Mercer pieced together fragments of a puzzle that spoke of a meticulous killer, a predator shrouded in ritual and precision. This was no crime of passion, she murmured to her partner, the weight of the truth heavy in her voice. A break in the case came unexpectedly, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. A local pawnshop owner recognized a distinctive emerald necklace that once adorned Walsh's neck. The culprit, a seemingly unremarkable maintenance worker named Michael Linden. Surveillance footage unveiled a haunting pattern of intrusion, of a man weaving in and out of Walsh's life like a ghost in the night. When Linden's abode was finally breached, a chilling tableau awaited the investigators. Walls lined with stolen moments, captured in photos of Walsh and others who bore a striking resemblance. A macabre shrine hidden behind a false wall, a sanctuary of obsession and possession. Each item meticulously catalogued, a twisted homage to lives taken too soon. The interrogation room shivered with a palpable chill as Linden sat in silence, his gaze unwavering as the accusations unfolded before him. "They were flawed," he uttered softly, his voice devoid of emotion. "Their perfection was a facade, a lie I could not abide." The search for truth led Mercer and her team to the desolate corners, where two more suitcases held the remains of women who had fallen victim to Linden's twisted sense of justice. Each life extinguished with a precision that bordered on madness, each death a tragic echo of a broken mind. As the trial unfurled, Linden remained a stoic figure, a shadow of the man who had once walked among them. The families of the victims watched in silent grief as justice was served, a life sentence sealing Linden's fate in a prison of his own making. For Detective Mercer, the case closed but left an echo of unanswered questions that lingered in the air like a haunting melody. What drove Linden to such extremes? What demons lurked in the shadows of his mind? The river continued its timeless journey downstream, carrying with it the weight of secrets untold. And in the quiet of the precinct, a desk adorned with copies of Linden's chilling notebook stood as a reminder that behind the facade of normalcy, darkness lurked, waiting to unveil its true nature. In the stillness of the night, where dreams and nightmares intertwined, the story of Catherine Walsh and those who followed whispered a cautionary tale of the dangers that lie hidden in plain sight. Story 17. In the depths of the attic, concealed beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, fragile and ancient, with its azure eyes painted and unblinking, gazing into the unknown. Sarah and Michael, a young couple captivated by the allure of a Victorian house acquired at auction, viewed the doll with amusement, dismissing it as just another overlooked relic of the past. Yet that night a peculiar sensation lingered in the air, a weightiness that permeated the atmosphere. The ensuing silence seemed to stretch endlessly, unsettling in its intensity. As the couple retired to bed, a disquieting presence lingered. Morning arrived, unveiling a startling discovery. The doll had vanished from the attic, now perched ominously at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael, unaware of the dark history intertwined with their new abode, soon found themselves entwined in a web of inexplicable events. Detective Rachel Winters, greeted by a brisk autumn morning, received a call that would lead her down a path shrouded in mystery. Within the master bedroom, a female victim lay in a contorted pose, her eyes wide with terror, a haunting expression frozen upon her countenance. Meanwhile, in the hallway, the male victim appeared as though he had attempted a desperate escape from an unseen threat. Amidst the meticulously arranged crime scene, devoid of forced entry or signs of struggle, Detective Winters observed the eerie precision of the victim's positioning. Quietly documenting her observations, she likened the female victim's posture to that of a doll plucked from its display, a macabre imitation of innocence. The investigation unfurled with interviews of neighbors recounting unsettling occurrences, a shadow glimpsed behind a window, childish laughter echoing through the night. Each tale added a layer of disquiet to the unfolding narrative. Forensic analysis unveiled traces of antique materials, hinting at a connection to the doll that now held a sinister presence in the house. Delving into the property's history revealed a chilling pattern. Previous owners met tragic fates under inexplicable circumstances, their deaths clouded in unsolved enigmas. A newspaper clipping unearthed by Detective Winters hinted at a dollmaker's tragic past, his final creation rumored to hold a malevolent essence. As the investigation progressed, a thread linking the victims emerged. They had all sought to alter the attic space, unknowingly awakening a dormant force within the house. Old photographs unveiled the dollmaker's dark legacy, his creations imbued with a haunting semblance of life. A revelation from a distant relative shed light on the dollmaker's arcane practices, infusing his dolls with more than mere craftsmanship. Whispers of bound spirits and forbidden rituals cast a pall over the investigation, blurring the lines between the tangible and the supernatural. Despite relentless pursuit, the case defied resolution, confounding even the seasoned detective. The doll, held as evidence, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of inexplicable events. Detective Winters, her final act shrouded in mystery, safeguarded a haunting memento, a photograph that hinted at untold secrets. The house, tainted by its troubled past, exchanged hands once more, its enigmatic history lingering like a ghostly whisper. The new owners, wise to the house's secrets, chose to leave the attic undisturbed, a silent sentinel to the unseen forces that dwelled within. On quiet nights, whispers of a spectral presence stirred amongst the neighbors, a fleeting glimpse of a shadow at the attic window, accompanied by the faint laughter of a child. And as the world slumbered, the dollmaker's legacy endured, a testament to the enduring power of the past to shape the present. Story 18: The Hidden Observer. The house on Maple Street held a secret, one that lurked beneath the surface, undetected by its unsuspecting occupants. The Mercer family, drawn in by the charm of the suburban property, had no idea of the darkness that lay hidden within its walls. It all began when they decided to renovate, pulling up the old carpet in the living room. Beneath it, a door lay concealed, its heavy, rusted handle beckoning them into the unknown depths below. With trepidation, they pried it open, revealing a staircase leading down into the murky darkness. Expecting to find a storage space, they were instead greeted by a chilling scene: a solitary chair bathed in the glow of a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows across the walls adorned with a series of photographs. But these were not just any pictures. They were snapshots of the Mercer family themselves, captured within the confines of their own home. Detective Sarah Connors, called to the scene by Mrs. Mercer's frantic plea, delved into the mystery alongside her partner and the forensic team. The basement, a small room with concrete walls and a single chair at its center, held a trove of unsettling evidence. The wall of photographs, meticulously arranged in chronological order, chronicled the lives of the unsuspecting families who had inhabited the house before the Mercers. As the investigation unfolded, a disturbing pattern emerged. Previous owners had come and gone, each staying for a brief period before selling the house at decreasing prices, oblivious to the hidden voyeur within. The house itself seemed to hold secrets, with blueprints altered, permits withdrawn, and inspection reports redacted over the years. The pivotal moment came when they unearthed a hidden cache of digital recordings, capturing intimate moments and conversations within the walls of the house. The mastermind behind this invasive surveillance was none other than Edward Kelvin, the elusive builder of the property who had seemingly vanished without a trace. Kelvin's obsession with the families who resided in his creation was chillingly detailed in his journal, filled with notes on their routines, habits, and vulnerabilities. He saw himself not as an intruder, but as a guardian, believing the families had willingly become his subjects by moving into his meticulously orchestrated surveillance apparatus. The manhunt for Kelvin ended with the discovery of his emaciated form hidden within the house's structure, a ghostly presence who had melded with the very architecture he had designed. His detached demeanor during the trial revealed a mind consumed by delusions, where the boundaries between observer and inhabitant had blurred beyond recognition. As the legal proceedings unfolded and the house was razed to the ground, the families left in Kelvin's wake grappled with the realization that their most private moments had been violated, observed by a phantom presence they had never known existed. The betrayal of their trust lingered, casting a shadow of unease over their lives as they wondered if they were truly alone in the sanctity of their own homes. And so the legacy of Edward Kelvin, the hidden observer, haunted not just the physical remnants of the house on Maple Street, but the hearts and minds of those who had unknowingly played a part in his twisted narrative. The echoes of his voyeuristic gaze lingered, a reminder that sometimes the most insidious threats are the ones we never see coming. Story 19. Renovations always bring hidden mysteries to light, old relics, forgotten treasures, remnants of a bygone era. But when Sarah and Michael decided to revamp their new Victorian home, they stumbled upon something beyond their expectations. Beneath the floorboards lay a letter, carefully tucked away, waiting to be discovered. The paper, fragile and worn, bore a cryptic message: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could process the ominous warning, 3 distinct knocks reverberated through the empty rooms, sending shivers down their spines. The couple had acquired the historic estate at an auction, captivated by its intricate details and storied past. Little did they know that their renovation project would unveil a dark secret. Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator, arrived at the scene with her partner. The exposed floorboards revealed a hidden cavity below. With skilled hands accustomed to handling evidence, Reed carefully retrieved the note, noting the couple's inadvertent contact had tainted it. As Sarah and Michael recounted the chilling knocking, Reed observed their genuine fear. Background checks on the couple yielded nothing suspicious, just a pair of newlyweds with stable lives. However, the house held a complex history. Previously owned by the Hargrove family for generations, it stood vacant after the passing of its last occupant, the reclusive widow Margaret Hargrove. No enemies, no foul play in her demise, just the quiet passing of an elderly woman, yet an unsettling aura lingered. Forensic analysis dated the note back 2 decades. The distressed handwriting hinted at fear and urgency. Margaret, in her 60s at the time, lived with her late husband Franklin, a respected teacher and woodworker. Franklin's pieces still adorn the house, a testament to his craftsmanship. Delving deeper, Reed uncovered Franklin's troubled final years, marked by paranoia and whispers of being watched. A former student's recollection shed light on Franklin's descent into fear and suspicion, mistaken for dementia by many. A breakthrough emerged during Reed's interview with Margaret's sister, now residing in a care facility. Through fading memories, a chilling revelation surfaced. Margaret feared the collector who knocked, not Franklin. Franklin's gambling debts had attracted the attention of a relentless man known as Victor Mercer, a lone shark and gambler who vanished without a trace. Margaret contemplated selling the house to settle the debts, but Franklin's pride stood in the way. Returning to the house with a forensic team, Reed's investigation unearthed a grim discovery: a male skeleton buried beneath the foundation. Dental records ruled out Franklin, leading to the identification of Victor Mercer, the missing collector. Margaret's diaries, hidden in the attic, provided the missing pieces. Franklin's confrontation with Mercer had turned deadly, resulting in a clandestine burial and a haunting secret. Margaret's entries chronicled her descent into paranoia, haunted by the specter of the 3 knocks. Closure came with the resolution of Mercer's fate, his remains laid to rest and the truth exposed. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, sold the property, leaving it abandoned and untouched. Whispers in the town spoke of eerie happenings, with tales of 3 knocks in the dead of night, a ghostly reminder of the past. The note, a chilling artifact, remained in evidence storage, a silent witness to the hidden horrors of the old Victorian home. Margaret's truth, whether directed at Mercer, Franklin, or an unknown entity, lingered in the shadows, a mystery that even Detective Reed's meticulous investigation couldn't fully unravel. Some secrets, she mused in her final report, are destined to remain shrouded in ambiguity, leaving us to ponder the enigmatic whispers of the past. Story 20. She never fancied going up there, but when the storm caused a leak in the roof, she had no choice. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, draped in layers of dust and cobwebs, shrouded in mystery. Nestled in the farthest corner, an old dollhouse stood, emitting an eerie aura. Its miniature furniture was meticulously arranged, each piece telling a story of its own. However, as her gaze fell upon the tiny inhabitants, a knot twisted in her stomach. These weren't mere dolls, they were intricately hand-carved replicas of her family. Each figure placed with eerie precision, mirroring their real-life counterparts downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to represent her stood by the attic door, a silent sentinel watching over the miniature world. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the slight groove where the tiny wooden figure stood. A chill ran down her spine, unrelated to the cold draft whispering through the air. The dollhouse's presence was unsettling. This wasn't their childhood home, but a rental property they had recently moved into. Shocked and disturbed, Rebecca made a frantic call to law enforcement. Officers arrived at the suburban residence to find a family in distress, huddled in fear in their living room, refusing to venture back upstairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially dismissed their unease as a prank or a product of their imagination, trying to cope with a new environment. Yet the intricate detail of the dollhouse figures left her intrigued. Each tiny replica captured unique traits of the family members: the father's graying hair, the son's favorite hoodie, even the mother's small birthmark. The case took a chilling turn when forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. Microscopic cameras hidden in the figure's eyes were connected to a sophisticated recording system beneath the dollhouse, capturing the family's every move. The positions of the miniature figures didn't just mimic that evening, but mirrored their daily routines, indicating a deep intrusion into their lives. Detective Harmon realized they were dealing with an unprecedented level of obsession, far beyond mere stalking. Further investigation unveiled a concealed basement entrance behind a pantry wall, leading to a secret living space where the intruder had been residing for weeks before the Morgans' arrival. Strangely, there was no sign of forced entry, and the house had sat empty for almost a year before their tenancy. The previous owner's son, Martin Wells, emerged as the prime suspect. His financial troubles drove him to create these elaborate surveillance setups in various homes, including the Morgans, to retain control and a sense of ownership. Digital forensics traced the surveillance data to Wells' apartment across town, revealing a disturbing collection of photographs and journals documenting the lives of unsuspecting families. The dollhouse was merely a part of his elaborate scheme to maintain dominance over the properties and their occupants. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed, justifying his actions as a means to ensure respect for his childhood home and a way to assert constant surveillance. Psychological evaluations painted a picture of possessive delusion, rooted in Wells' inability to accept his loss and his need to control the lives of others. The Morgans never returned to the house, haunted by the realization that they had been unwittingly observed and manipulated. Wells faced multiple charges, shedding light on the need for stricter real estate disclosure laws and tenant protections. The case left criminologists astounded by the extent of Wells' voyeurism, suggesting he had lurked within homes for years unnoticed. The Morgans relocated, seeking solace far from the prying eyes of their past. Yet Rebecca's lingering fear persisted, a constant reminder of the invasion they endured. She removed all traces of miniatures from their new home, but still felt a ghostly presence, wondering if somewhere a miniature version of herself was being moved in a dollhouse yet to be uncovered. Story 21, the aged apartment exuded a quiet air of mystery. The heating system emitted low groans, the pipes whispered secrets. It was all part of the building's charm, or so they thought. Yet one fateful night everything changed. A faint voice, delicate yet unmistakable, drifted through the labyrinth of vents. It wasn't the usual background hum of neighbors chatting or TV shows playing. This voice was different. It whispered, calling out a name that sent shivers down her spine. She leaned in closer, her ear pressed against the cold metal grate, heart racing in her chest. A cold breath brushed against her cheek, followed by a soft, almost playful declaration, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the heart of the empty apartment, her keen gaze fixed on the rusty vent cover that had been pried open. The forensic team moved around her diligently, capturing every detail with their cameras. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate had led them here, had been gone for a week before the stench caught the building manager's attention. What they uncovered within the ventilation system defied logic. She mentioned hearing voices through the vents, Officer Patel recited from his notes, but the building management dismissed her claims, attributing them to the old heating system's quirks. Shaw knelt by the vent, studying the deep scratch marks surrounding it. These weren't made by tools, she whispered to herself. The marks seemed desperate, as if someone inside had been clawing to escape. It sent a chill down her spine. Alina Reeves, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a green thumb, had vanished without a trace. Her classroom plant still flourished, a silent testament to her absence. Her students had crafted cards waiting for her return. Her sister, the one who reported her missing, shared a troubling detail during the interview. Alina had grown paranoid in the days leading up to her disappearance, she revealed, voice trembling with emotion. She was convinced that someone was watching her, speaking to her through the vents. I thought it was just work stress getting to her. As Shaw surveyed the apartment, a new narrative unfolded before her eyes: the meticulously made bed, the neglected coffee mug in the sink, the chair positioned beneath the vent as if someone had been perched there, listening intently. The forensic analysis yielded eerie revelations. Fibers found in the vent matched Alina's favorite cardigan. A mysterious fingerprint not belonging to Alina was discovered inside the vent cover. Most disturbing were the audio snippets retrieved from Alina's phone. Alone in her car, rain tapping on the roof, Shaw listened to the recordings. Alina's voice, tinged with fear, echoed, "If you're real, say something." A prolonged silence was shattered by a faint whisper, "Alina, dear Alina, let me in." Diving deeper into the building's history, Shaw uncovered a troubling pattern. Previous tenants had fled, citing strange noises and unsettling experiences. One even suffered from hallucinations of voices emanating from the vents. The building superintendent, Harold Weber, appeared calm on the surface, dismissing the claims as mere building noises. But under Shaw's scrutiny, his facade began to crack. During interrogation, Weber's demeanor shifted when questioned about the former residents of apartment 4B. A subtle tension crept into his responses, a hint of evasion in his gaze. "I don't keep tabs on everyone who comes and goes," he deflected, his eyes evading Shaw's gaze. The investigation took a chilling turn when a concealed panel was discovered in Alina's bathroom, leading to a hidden passage within the walls. Inside, a trove of items hinted at a sinister presence: a flashlight, food wrappers, evidence of someone living in the shadows, observing, whispering. Weber's pristine apartment revealed a stark contrast to his unsettling actions. Hidden within his computer were organized files, meticulously documenting his voyeuristic activities. Shaw's blood ran cold as she delved into the disturbing contents: recordings, photographs, a digital journal chronicling his intentions to draw Alina into his twisted world. The most damning evidence surfaced in a storage unit linked to Weber: a macabre collection of belongings from past tenants, preserved like macabre mementos. His arrest, met with eerie compliance, only added to the enigma surrounding him. "They all hear me eventually," he murmured to Shaw, a haunting smile playing on his lips. "The building speaks through me." The truth revealed itself in the coroner's report. Alina had been lured and drugged, then led into the ventilation system where she met her tragic end. The families of previous tenants stepped forward, sharing tales of missing items and loved ones plagued by paranoia. A dark thread connected them all: Weber, the hidden predator within the walls. As the trial unfolded, Weber's facade crumbled. His attorney cited madness, but the prosecution painted a picture of calculated manipulation. The jury's swift verdict sealed his fate: guilty on all counts. In a final chilling exchange, Weber whispered to Shaw as he was escorted away, "They'll always hear me. The whispers never cease." The once vibrant apartment building now stands desolate, a shadow of its former self. Despite efforts to erase the past, new residents speak of eerie sounds from the vents, whispers in the walls, a presence that lingers. The heating system still groans, the pipes continue to rattle, a haunting reminder of the secrets buried within the building's walls. Story 22. The worn plank shifted beneath her weight, releasing a soft creak that echoed through the stillness of the old house. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced the edges of the loose board, sensing a hidden realm beneath the surface. Gently, she pried up the wooden planks, unveiling a dark, secretive space below the house. Dust and cobwebs greeted her at first, but as her eyes adjusted to the dim light, shapes began to materialize in the shadows. A mattress, a chair, and tucked away in a corner, a weathered notebook filled with repetitions of a single name, her name. Sarah Coleman peered into the darkness, a shiver running down her spine as Detective Morgan Reed observed from behind, a silent witness to the unveiling of a disturbing secret. The fear in Sarah's eyes spoke of more than mere surprise. It whispered of an invasion of her sanctuary, a violation of her newfound sanctuary. "Don't disturb anything else," Detective Reed's voice cut through the tense air, steady and commanding. With a click, her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing walls adorned with surveillance images, snapshots of Sarah's daily life, her routines, her moments of solitude. A shrine of obsession hidden beneath her very feet. Sarah had acquired the cozy cottage from the estate of Walter Green, an elderly recluse who had passed away without kin. The property had stood empty for months, waiting silently for its new occupant. The real estate listing had painted a picture of quaint charm, masking the sinister reality lurking beneath the floorboards. "I never met him, the previous owner." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. The neighbors spoke of his reclusiveness. "I was assured that the basement was sealed off long ago. The inspection report never hinted at this hidden chamber." The crime scene team arrived, their equipment clattering against the wooden floors as they entered the clandestine space. They meticulously documented the scene, capturing evidence and finally removing the mattress, the chair, and the notebook from their secretive abode. Forensic experts uncovered a myriad of fingerprints, all belonging to the deceased Walter Green, scattered throughout the hidden room. What sent a chill down their spines was the timeline they reconstructed. Through utility bills and dated photographs, they uncovered Walter's silent vigil over Sarah for a span of at least 3 years before his demise. He had shadowed her steps, shared spaces with her, all without her awareness. This level of fixation typically escalates, the department psychologist shared during a briefing. The transition from fantasy to action. The concealed chamber suggests he was preparing for a more direct encounter. Detective Reed's inquiries led her to a former colleague of Walter's from the local mall maintenance crew. An uneasy conversation unveiled snippets of Walter's infatuation with Sarah, hidden behind veiled words and restless gestures. He often mentioned her, the man confessed, twirling his wedding band nervously. Said she reminded him of someone. I brushed it off as harmless rambling. I never thought. His voice trailed off, haunted by unspoken thoughts. Did he speak of any intentions involving her? Reed prodded further, not explicit plans, but he had this phrase he'd repeat. "She belongs with me." "I thought it was just talk," the man confessed. Armed with a warrant, Reed probed into Walter's locker at the mall, a relic untouched since his passing. Within, they unearthed a key with no match in his residence. Following the serial number, they traced it to a storage unit registered under his name. The metallic door screeched open, revealing an eerie tableau, a replica of Sarah's former apartment, from furniture to decor meticulously recreated. A mannequin adorned with a wig akin to Sarah's hairstyle perched at the replica desk. The most unsettling find was a calendar, marked with a date a mere week after Walter's sudden demise. A crimson circle enveloped a single word: together. The investigation unveiled Walter's institutionalization in his youth, a past marred by an obsession with a teacher he believed reciprocated his affections. Released into society, he lived a quiet existence until Sarah unknowingly triggered his dormant fixation. Spread across the conference table, crime scene photos painted a morbid picture. He departed convinced of a mutual bond. In his mind, they were destined to unite, Reed remarked somberly. Could she have crossed paths with him at some point? An encounter that sparked this fixation, a colleague inquired. Reed shook her head. No trace we can find. Sometimes these obsessions require little fuel, a passing smile, a lingering gaze for an individual with his history that could suffice. Sarah made the decision to part with the house, unable to find solace within its walls. During the final visit with her realtor, she stood in the living room, a sense of unease clinging to her. I can't help but wonder what might have occurred if he hadn't passed when he did, she murmured. How long would I have dwelled here, oblivious to his watchful eye, unaware of the secrets concealed beneath my feet? Walter's demise marked the conclusion of the case, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, though the abduction never transpired. The psychological evaluation painted a grim portrait of his designs to confine Sarah within the hidden room or the storage unit. Sarah relocated, altering her routines, safeguarding her privacy with newfound vigilance. Detective Reed sporadically checked in on her, a silent acknowledgement of the peril that had hovered so near, the fate narrowly averted. The cottage passed into the possession of a young couple, ignorant of its shadowed past. The hidden chamber was sealed, the flooring renewed. Life ebbed onward. Yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room concealed beneath the floorboards lingered as a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurk unseen, of monsters who fade into the night, and of survivors who unknowingly skirt the precipice of their own undoing. Story 23. Once upon a time there was a peculiar occurrence, a pocket dial filled with static and faint, muffled sounds. Initially dismissed as insignificant, it captured the attention of the operator when a voice pierced through the chaos. A woman's voice, laden with urgency, whispered, "He's here." Then silence descended like a heavy curtain. The mysterious call originated from a number linked to an empty house, a dwelling abandoned by inhabitants for many years. Upon investigation, there were no signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the stillness of the residence. However, in the kitchen veiled by layers of dust, a phone sat atop the counter, its screen inexplicably illuminated. Astonishingly, the call had been made just moments before. Detective Morgan Reed, filled with intrigue, pressed the playback button repeatedly, each time haunted by the haunting whisper, desperate, terrified, and seemingly impossible. The vacant property had once belonged to the Sullivan family, who had vacated the premises after a devastating fire ravaged the west wing of their home. No one had resided there since, except for the occasional caretaker who attested that the house remained undisturbed for years. "Can we run a background check on the number?" Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. "It's registered to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter. She passed away 3 years ago in a tragic car accident." Morgan gazed at the evidence bag containing the enigmatic phone, the pieces of the puzzle refusing to fit together cohesively. The case defied logic, a deceased woman's phone making calls from an abandoned abode. The only disruption in the settled dust was where the phone perched, almost as if it had manifested out of thin air. Despite thorough examination by the forensic team, no substantial evidence emerged. The device harbored no fingerprints except for indistinct smudges that defied identification. No footprints led to or from the house, and all entry points remained securely fastened. The focal point of their inquiry became the enigmatic recording 11 seconds of static, labored breathing, and 5 cryptic words. Voice analysis confirmed a startling revelation. The voice matched that of Catherine Sullivan with an astounding 98% certainty, extracted from archived videos. More perplexing was the timestamp, indicating the call coincided with the exact moment of Catherine's demise 3 years prior, down to the minute. Morgan and Walsh embarked on a quest to interview acquaintances of Catherine. Her father, now remarried, appeared genuinely perplexed by the unfolding mystery. Her mother, residing in solitude in a modest apartment, crumbled upon hearing the chilling recording. "That's my Katie," she murmured, her voice trembling. "She sounds so frightened." Mark Jennings, Catherine's boyfriend at the time of her passing, possessed a verified alibi for the night of the ominous call. He was diligently fulfilling a night shift at the hospital, corroborated by multiple witnesses and surveillance footage. The paradox deepened as the house stood uninhabited. The call, inexplicable and unsettling, defied all logical explanations. The investigation reached a standstill until a pivotal call from Catherine's mother reignited the dwindling flames of inquiry. "I stumbled upon something among her possessions," she divulged, her voice quivering with trepidation. Katie maintained a journal, the final entry. You must see it. Within the pages of the journal lay meticulous entries chronicling Catherine's tumultuous relationship with Mark. The entries transitioned from affectionate beginnings to accounts of control, isolation, and ultimately fear. The concluding entry bore a chilling message. "He discovered my intentions to depart. His fury knows no bounds. If harm befalls me, know it was no mere accident." Confronted once more, Mark's veneer of composure disintegrated under the penetrating scrutiny of Morgan. "You believe I harmed Katie due to her journal entries. That's not evidence," he retorted defensively. Morgan drew attention to a crucial detail. "The accident report indicates you were the first responder on the scene, preceding emergency services." Mark's complexion paled, his fa-deck crumbling under the weight of mounting suspicion. "I was anxious when she failed to arrive. I set out in search of her," he stammered unconvincingly. "Her vehicle veered off a secluded road. How did you ascertain her location?" His response faltered, his expression betraying a sense of unease. "I already told you I was concerned." Revisiting the site of the tragic accident, investigators delved deeper into the mystery that shrouded Catherine's untimely demise. Although her car had been removed long ago, Morgan authorized the deployment of ground-penetrating radar in the vicinity. Astonishingly, the radar unveiled a startling revelation: Catherine's actual phone buried 20 feet from the crash site. The device discovered in the abandoned house served as a decoy, a replica safeguarded at her parents' abode. Examination of the buried phone unraveled a series of deleted text messages exchanged between Catherine and her sister on the fateful night. "Mark has uncovered my intentions to leave him. He's trailing me in his vehicle." Subsequent messages painted a harrowing picture. "He's forcing me off the road." Upon re-evaluation of photographic evidence from Catherine's autopsy, the medical examiner noted discrepancies that hinted at a more sinister narrative. The injuries sustained by Catherine did not align solely with the vehicular crash. Defensive wounds on her hands, coupled with bruising indicative of strangulation, hinted at a malevolent force at play. When law enforcement descended upon Mark's residence to effect his arrest, they were met with an unsettling sight. His dwelling harbored a shrine dedicated to Catherine, a shrine adorned with stolen mementos, photographs, and articles chronicling her tragic demise. Amidst his possessions lay incriminating evidence, a trove of audio manipulation software and scripts detailing the orchestration of the phantom call, a macabre ruse devised to sow confusion amongst investigators and the grieving Sullivan family. As the investigation widened its scope to encompass other cases involving Mark's involvement as an emergency responder, unsettling truths emerged. 2 additional suspicious deaths of young women surfaced, each cloaked in the guise of accidents, each linked to Mark's sinister machinations. Following a 6-day manhunt, officers chanced upon Mark's vehicle stationed outside the Sullivan residence. Inside, they discovered him seated in the kitchen, his gaze fixated upon a phone identical to Catherine's. Submissive and resigned, Mark offered no resistance to the apprehending officers. She refused to remain silent, he divulged to Morgan during interrogation. Even after I silenced her, she persisted, accusing me. I needed everyone to hear her voice, to believe she lingered somewhere beyond. A specter bears no testimony against me. The judicial process unfolded swiftly, culminating in a verdict of guilty for Mark on charges of first-degree murder. As the courtroom reverberated with the pronouncement of justice, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest, a poignant testament to the closure that had finally materialized. Justice not through spectral means, but through the resolute voice of Catherine, preserved in her words, her fears immortalized in ink, her valiant attempts to seek solace in her final moments. The phone from the forsaken abode now resides within the confines of the evidence locker, a silent sentinel to the saga that unfolded within its spectral confines. Occasionally, officers swear they hear a phantom ring emanating from the dormant device, despite its battery having long been removed. Catherine's tale endures not as a specter's whisper, but as a testament to the indomitable spirit of victims, who find ways to voice their truths even when their physical presence has been extinguished. And so, the enigmatic story of Catherine Sullivan reverberates a tale of tragedy, manipulation, and ultimately, justice prevailing in the wake of darkness. Story 24. In the quiet stillness of the old apartment, peculiar sounds echoed through the walls, pipes that groaned, floorboards that creaked. Yet the new tenant, Sarah Coleman, sensed a presence beyond the ordinary. The footsteps she heard were too deliberate, too rhythmic for a building settling into the night. They echoed from above, slow and steady, in a hypnotic cadence. Oddly, Sarah resided on the top floor, with no one living above her. One fateful night, curiosity mingled with unease, pushing Sarah to tentatively tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased abruptly, plunging the space into an eerie silence. Then, in the quiet, a solitary knock reverberated back to her from within the ceiling itself. Sarah chose to keep the mysterious knocking incident to herself, attributing it to the settling of the aged structure, or perhaps a small creature exploring the hidden nooks of the attic. Despite her efforts to ignore the persistent footsteps that traversed her ceiling each night, she found solace in turning up the volume of her television, donning headphones to escape the methodical footfalls haunting her in the darkness. Detective Morris was drawn into the enigmatic tale when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace while conducting routine repairs in the building. A water leak had prompted the worker to remove a section of drywall in the hallway adjacent to Sarah's apartment. To his astonishment, he uncovered a narrow passageway that defied the building's known layout. Peering inside with a flashlight, he illuminated a hidden living space, a realm of discarded food wrappers, empty water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a tattered notebook. The building superintendent promptly alerted the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken, muttering about an unseen presence dwelling within the walls, watching. The discovered notebook held meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman's daily life, her routines, her interactions, her preferences. The once neat handwriting descended into chaos, with cryptic symbols adorning the margins. The final entry bore a chilling declaration. The subject no longer responds to my signals. She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me. Forensic experts scoured the crawl space, unearthing fingerprints that eluded identification in any known database. They unveiled a labyrinthine network of passages interwoven within the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades. These hidden pathways connected various apartments, culminating in discrete viewing points disguised as fixtures or inconspicuous damage, yet all converging upon Sarah Coleman's dwelling. Interviews with current residents yielded no extraordinary accounts, merely the commonplace sounds of communal living. However, former tenants painted a harrowing narrative. 3 predecessors of Sarah recounted sensations of being watched or unexplained disturbances, prompting one to flee after a mere fortnight. Yet none had vocalized their ordeals, fearing the stigma of paranoia. The investigation took a pivotal turn upon the discovery of minuscule blood traces within one of the concealed passages. DNA analysis linked the samples to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. His mysterious disappearance had baffled authorities, his fate relegated to the annals of unsolved cases. Martin had dwelled directly beneath Sarah's abode. Delving deeper into Martin's vanishing, Detective Morris unearthed a troubling chronicle. Martin had voiced grievances about disturbances emanating from the apartment above his abode, occupied by a reclusive individual named Edward, known for his taciturn demeanor. Following a confrontation between Martin and Edward, the former vanished into obscurity, prompting Edward's sudden departure without a forwarding address. Scrutinizing Edward's past residences revealed a recurring pattern. He sought top-floor accommodations, maintained minimal social ties, and vacated premises without a trace. An acquaintance from his 3rd residence labeled him as intense, recalling Edward's fixation on silence. The investigators' trail led to a remote rural expanse owned by Edward, unveiling a cabin enveloped in secrecy. Adorning the walls were photographs and notes documenting residents from various apartment complexes, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Intricate diagrams detailed ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities, alongside journals chronicling specimen observations and habitat maintenance. At the heart of the cabin stood a corkboard adorned with newspaper clippings, missing persons reports encompassing 6 individuals, all former denizens of Edward's inhabited buildings. Beneath the board, etched grooves marred the wooden flooring, suggesting the repeated dragging of something ponderous. Trailing behind the cabin, cadaver dogs guided investigators to freshly disturbed earth, exposing human remains concealed beneath the soil. As forensic specialists endeavored to identify the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's abode. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, whispers of spectral noises persisted amongst the residents. During the installation of enhanced security measures, maintenance personnel stumbled upon a second notebook secreted within a crevice where the ceiling met the wall, a newer addition to Edward's eerie archives. The initial page bore a haunting message. They found my old nest, but not my new one. The handwriting mirrored that of the prior notebook, culminating in a crude depiction of Sarah's living space with a crimson-marked passage and a cryptic date set for that night. Alarmed, officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to discover her apartment deserted. Her abandoned phone rested on the kitchen counter, the television droning in the background, the shower cascading waters unheard. Within the misted bathroom mirror, a chilling directive materialized, etched by a phantom finger. Look up. The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed, unveiling a hidden void. Edward Mercer, the elusive figure behind the clandestine network, remained at large. Investigators exposed Edward's true identity as a former construction specialist well-versed in structural renovations. His adeptness in manipulating building frameworks facilitated the creation of covert observation points and passages. Thermal scans of Sarah's residence revealed no current occupancy within the walls, leaving her fate shrouded in uncertainty. Sarah Coleman's disappearance echoed similar vanishing acts across state lines, prompting authorities to caution apartment administrators regarding unauthorized modifications and concealed compartments. Amidst the haunting revelations of graves, diaries, and surveillance imagery, Detective Morris remained haunted by the specter of Sarah, ensnared in a realm of unfathomable terror. In moments of solitude, Detective Morris finds himself gazing upwards, attuned to the silent whispers of the night, pondering the unseen forces that may linger in the shadows, listening, waiting, and wondering who else might be peering through the veil of darkness. Story 25. In the beginning, the new occupants of the old Victorian house thought nothing of the peeling wallpaper. It was just another task on the long list of renovations that awaited them. But as they carefully stripped away the layers, a hidden narrative unraveled before their eyes. Inked into the wall repeatedly was a name, Alina Winters. The same name, etched in a frantic and uneven script, filled every inch of the hidden wall, whispering a tale of mystery and intrigue. It wasn't a name from the past owners. It didn't exist in any official records. Yet a single search online unveiled a chilling connection, a missing persons case from decades ago. And to their astonishment, the woman in the faded photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to the elegant lady who had sold them the house. Michael and Sarah Klein had never anticipated diving into the secrets of their new home so quickly. The allure of the aged abode, with its intricate woodwork and soaring ceilings, had captured their hearts. The house came at an unexpectedly affordable price, and the previous owner, a woman of grace with strands of silver in her dark hair, had seemed eager to part with the property, mentioning her relocation across the country. The unraveling began with a simple water stain in the master bedroom. Sarah spotted a yellowish hue seeping through the floral wallpaper, signaling hidden layers beneath. With gentle curiosity, they began peeling back the damaged section, revealing a journey through time. Outdated paisley patterns from the 70s greeted them on the first layer, followed by striped paper from an earlier era. But it was the third layer that held an unexpected surprise, a revelation in ink. Dark against faded beige, the name Alina Winters emerged, repeated endlessly in a desperate, erratic scrawl that seemed to echo through the walls. "Who is Alina Winters?" Sarah whispered, her fingers tracing the haunting letters. The discovery stirred unease in both of them. That night, under the soft glow of the kitchen lights, Michael delved into online archives, searching for any trace of the mysterious name. The house's history revealed a complex web of former owners, yet Alina Winters remained a ghostly figure, absent from all official documents. The woman who had handed them the keys, Margaret Cavendish, was the sole connection to the enigmatic Alina. As they delved deeper, scanning old newspapers and digital archives, a faded article emerged from 3 decades past. Alina Winters, a young woman of 27, reported missing during the bitter cold of winter. The grayscale portrait depicted her with dark locks and striking eyes that mirrored those of Margaret Cavendish, the enigmatic seller of their newfound home. "The missing woman, the forgotten case," Michael murmured, his voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the refrigerator. Sarah's heart clenched at the realization that Alina's disappearance had never been resolved, leaving behind a void of unanswered questions and silent suspicions. Their intrigue blossomed into an all-consuming quest for truth. Sarah reached out to past homeowners, painstakingly tracing the threads of history woven into the house's walls. Renovations took a backseat as they dedicated their evenings to unraveling the mystery that had found its way into their lives. They unearthed the peculiar fact that Margaret Cavendish had owned the house for a mere 7 months before passing it on to them, a departure from the usual intricacies of property transactions. A retired detective, once tasked with Aliner's case, shed light on the past investigation. Aliner's vanishing had been swift and elusive, leaving no traces except for the haunting echo of her name on the walls. The mention of Margaret Cavendish failed to ring any bells in the detective's memory, setting off a new wave of questions in Michael and Sarah's minds. The retired detective's reminiscences led to a renewed interest in the cold case. Forensics teams descended upon the house, meticulously documenting the writings on the wall and extracting sections for further analysis. The ink, aged approximately 3 decades, bore the weight of a vanished past, leaving behind only cryptic remnants of a life once lived. While the investigation unfolded, Sarah stumbled upon a concealed compartment beneath the bedroom closet floorboards. Inside lay a trove of identification cards bearing different names, each featuring the same face with subtle alterations. Among them, Aliner Winter's driver's license lay nestled beside the final revelation, a card bearing the name Margaret Cavendish, the very person who had sold them the house. Attempts to contact Margaret through provided information led to dead ends. Her disappearance mirrored Aliner's in its eerie precision, raising suspicions that transcended mere coincidence. The walls held secrets that not even Margaret's vanishing act could fully conceal. A pivotal breakthrough arrived with the analysis of hair strands extracted from the concealed wall cavity. Aliner's DNA lingered within the aged fibers, linking her to the shadowy past buried within the house's walls. But the fingerprints found on the scribbled confessions painted a different narrative, one belonging to Rebecca Eldridge, a psychiatric patient entwined in a web of fractured identities. Rebecca, diagnosed with severe dissociative identity disorder, had woven a tapestry of personas to shield herself from the harsh realities of her fractured mind. Aliner had been but one facet of her elaborate charade, a character she had adopted in a desperate bid to hold onto a semblance of reality. The scrawled name Aliner Winters symbolized Rebecca's tenuous grasp on her own identity, a haunting reminder of a past she could not fully escape. As forensic teams ventured into the backyard, guided by the whispering echoes of the past, they unearthed remnants that bore the weight of a long-buried truth. Aliner's remains lay beneath the earth, finally brought into the light after years of shadowed obscurity. The garden, once a sanctuary of blooming secrets, harbored the chilling legacy of a crime long forgotten. Rebecca, masquerading as Margaret Cavendish, was apprehended attempting to flee, her fractured identities collapsing under the weight of undeniable evidence. The walls, once silent witnesses to a tragic history, now stood as a testament to the intertwined fates of Aliner and Rebecca. Justice, delayed but not denied, finally found its mark. For Michael and Sarah, the house morphed from a haven of dreams into a haunting reminder of the past. Their sanctuary had borne witness to a tale of fractured identities and lost souls, forever etched into the annals of true crime lore. The walls themselves had confessed to a tragedy that spanned decades, a chilling reminder that some secrets can never stay hidden for long. Story 26. The old house sat silent, its walls holding secrets long forgotten. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman who vanished, leaving behind an empty space that no one dared to fill. And yet, when the new residents crossed the threshold, they stumbled upon a locked bedroom, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. With a creak and a crack, they forced the stubborn door open, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust danced in the stagnant air, a heavy veil of neglect shrouding the space. But amidst the stillness, a peculiar sight caught their eye. The bed neatly made, the mirror gleaming untouched by time's cruel hand. And there on the desk, a single candle stood vigil, its flame long extinguished, leaving behind a trail of hardened wax like silent tears. A notebook lay open, its pages a canvas of secrets waiting to be unveiled. Detective Morgan delved into the written words of Elise Winters, a young soul lost to the shadows almost half a decade ago. Her elegant script danced across the paper, each stroke a whisper from the past, but it was the final entry that sent shivers down their spine. "I know he's watching me tonight," the words etched in desperation. "If something happens, know that it wasn't random." The room bore witness to a tale of deceit and betrayal, of a young woman caught in a web of lies spun by the powerful. Elise, a paralegal with a sharp mind and a keen eye, had unearthed secrets that threatened to shatter the facade of a prestigious law firm. Her pursuit of truth led her down a dark path, one that culminated in her sudden disappearance, leaving behind a room frozen in time. As the investigation unfolded, hidden truths came to light, clues scattered like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. Fingers brushed against dust-covered surfaces, seeking answers in the silence of the room. The faint scent of chemicals lingered, a ghostly reminder of the past that refused to fade away. The detective's gaze fell upon photographs of Elise, a glimpse into a life cut short by greed and deception. Her image, a reflection of determination and resolve, painted a portrait of a woman who refused to be silenced by the darkness that surrounded her. In the depths of the room, a hidden compartment revealed its secrets, a key, a flash drive, a gateway to a world of corruption and deceit. Documents spoke of manipulated data, of lives sacrificed at the altar of corporate greed. The truth, once buried, now stood exposed, a beacon of justice illuminating the shadows. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and influence, stood at the heart of the storm, his web of lies unraveled, his facade crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. The passage hidden in the shadows led to his downfall, a path paved with betrayal and deceit. In the courtroom, the echoes of Elise's courage resonated, a voice from beyond the grave demanding justice. Harriman's denial crumbled in the face of irrefutable proof, his lies unraveling like threads in the wind. And as the final verdict was delivered, a sense of closure washed over the room, a whisper of peace for a soul lost in the darkness. The house remained empty, a silent sentinel standing guard over a story that would never be forgotten. In the stillness of the night, a faint light flickered in the window, a beacon of hope for those who dared to listen. The room where Elise made her final stand stood as a testament to her bravery, a shrine to a life lost but never forgotten. And in that moment of quiet reflection, justice found its voice, echoing through the empty halls of a house haunted by the past. Story 27, The Tale of the Whispering House. In the quiet anticipation of a new life soon to arrive, she felt the urge to refresh the nursery, to paint over the faded blue that whispered tales of years gone by. As the white paint glided smoothly over the walls, it revealed something hidden beneath a ghostly message, faint at first, then growing sharper, more defined. "Don't let it hear you." Her heart skipped a beat, and as she stepped back, she noticed them tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, too high for a child to reach. The discovery within the nursery of the Morgan household marked the genesis of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style residence at a surprisingly low price, unaware of the darkness that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the doorstep, a notepad in hand, greeted by a pregnant woman in paint-stained overalls, her eyes weary from sleepless nights. Tremors ran through the woman's hands as she recounted the eerie findings. The previous owners had vanished abruptly, leaving under the cloak of night with only essentials packed into their car, as the neighbors whispered. The detective explored the historic abode, her steps echoing on aged floorboards, leading her to the nursery, where the unsettling message and handprints still lingered beneath the unfinished paint. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property's history, uncovering a series of rapid turnovers and troubling child welfare reports lodged against past occupants. Stories of whispers in the night and unseen watchers haunted the files, pointing to a sinister past veiled by time. Further investigation unveiled the house's connection to Alina Blackwood, a widow who once ran an orphanage within its walls, where 5 children had mysteriously vanished. The unearthing of a hidden room behind the nursery wall, containing remnants of children's belongings but no bodies, hinted at a chilling secret buried within the house's past. Former residents shared tales of inexplicable occurrences, objects moving on their own, echoes of childish laughter in empty corridors, and cryptic messages appearing during renovations. The recurring warning, "Don't let them find you," penned in the same hand as Alina's journals, sent shivers down the detective's spine. A harrowing turn in the investigation led to the excavation of the basement, where the radar revealed 5 small anomalies beneath the concrete floor. Breaking through, they uncovered a grim truth: 5 child-sized remains arranged in a circle, bearing pendants engraved with the names of the missing orphans. Luminol sprayed in the nursery unveiled a haunting sight: countless handprints glowing in the dark, a testament to the trapped souls seeking escape. Alina's journals exposed her macabre intentions, believing she could prolong her life by absorbing the children's essence. With the victims finally laid to rest, the house stood vacant, its secrets locked within the walls. Detective Klein's report documented the closure of the case, yet a lingering unease persisted, a spectral presence that transcended time and paint. The nursery walls were raised, but whispers lingered in the air, voices of children lost to a tragic past. The house, condemned and forsaken, held onto its mysteries, a chilling reminder that some sins etched themselves into the very fabric of a place, beyond the reach of justice or redemption.